Good evening and welcome to the September 4th, 2024 meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Joe Steiner and I chair this board. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted here in the City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. For the benefit of the interested public, this meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube page. It's also broadcast on Summit's governmental channel, which is Comcast 34 and Verizon Channel 30. We also take a transcript of the meeting using the video and audio, so we need all speakers to utilize one of the microphones here in the room at the front. Please note that the fire exits are to my right, your left, and at the back of the room where you entered. The city also has an assisted listening system to help the hearing impaired. If anyone needs hearing assistance, please obtain the system at the dais and return it thereafter. I would ask our secretary to please call the roll.
Sure. Chairman Steiner?
Here.
Vice Chairman Loikitz?
Here.
Mr. Yuko is excused. Mr. Nelson?
Here.
Ms. Zahn?
Here.
Mr. Curran is excused. Mr. Malay is excused. Ms. Toth?
Here.
Ms. Chifo?
Here.
Mr. Feskins?
Here.
Mr. Chanchuli?
Here.
You have a quorum. You may proceed.
Thank you. The gentleman sitting to my right is Andy Ball. He is the zoning board's attorney. He will be advising the board members on matters of law and is the key interface with an applicant's attorney. Mr. Ball does not vote on the applications. Stephanie Sulios, whom you just met, is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. She works with applicants on preparing their applications, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. She also does not vote on the applications. We also have present representatives from Collier Engineering and Burgess Associates, our engineering firm and our planning firm, and they are the experts provided to us to provide input to the board, and also they do not vote on the applications. Our board consists of 7 members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. Before we enter into executive session to vote on the application and discuss it among the board members, you will be advised how many votes are required. Each case will begin with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of the application process to date and the variances that are required. We then hear from any additional expert witnesses the applicant may have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and any of the expert witnesses. Once the board members and the board professionals have completed their questioning, the public will have an opportunity to ask questions. That's not the time to tell us what you think of the application. That will come a little bit later. Before you ask your questions, we do ask that you please come use a microphone and clearly state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address. This is important so that the court reporter is able to keep a clear and accurate public record. After all of the witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have their second opportunity to speak. At that time, you will be sworn in and you may express your opinion, positive or negative, about the application. And then the public hearing will be closed, and we will enter into what is called executive session, where the board members will discuss the case and vote. You will be able to listen to our executive session, but you will not normally be able to participate in our discussion. The city zoning officer has asked that we remind all applicants that they must carefully read the resolution that documents the board's decisions and to pay particular attention to the conditions contained therein. For example, if a landscaping plan is required, you must obtain one and submit it to John Linson, the city's forester. If a grading plan is required, you must have one prepared by a civil engineer and submit 3 copies along with the application fee to the city's engineering division. Failure to satisfy all conditions in a resolution will result in a delay in approving your application, as it will cause additional work for the city's zoning staff. The resolutions documenting the board's decision are normally available 1 month after we decide the case. We are changing the agenda a little bit tonight. From those of you who have been here regularly, you'll note some of the things that we're doing a little bit different. But so we're going to handle some of the administrative matters first. You may have noticed a changed seating arrangement. I requested Ms. Zulios to randomly move people so that we'll all get to interact with each other. I hope this all works out for everyone. And we will move to resolutions for extension, and the first one is 90 Ashwood. And I believe you have the information and the update.
Yes, and I know Mr. Weber is here for the applicants. They have requested a 1-year extension to the resolution due to a lengthy state review process for the treatment works approval application, and that's associated with a sewer extension. They've also requested a 90-day extension for the filing of an amended subdivision approval to reflect that. This is their first request for an extension in this matter, and unless there's anything further that you'd like to add, Mr. Weber?
No, nothing further. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. James Weber of Alfonso and Weber on behalf of the applicant.
Any particular questions for Mr. Weber?
Questions from anybody? Are our professionals, have you had a chance to look at it, and any problems? Okay.
This was from 2022? This, am I looking at that right? Zoning Board 22-2152?
It was filed in 22, I believe.
Yes, and it
Yeah.
It was decided less than a year ago.
Okay.
That's what, right.
That was my
And the
question.
treatment works application's been deemed complete by DEP this August 30th. They're hopeful to have that TWA by the middle of October.
Yeah, the applicant was able to continue to be bound by all terms. Resolution of approval memorialized on October 16th, 2023. So they're just ahead of the first year, and they know they're not going to make it, so.
Gotcha.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
I don't hear a second.
I second.
Oh, okay. Down, Mr. Nelson. Roll call, I believe.
Sure. Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
Ms. Zahn?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Loikett?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
Ms. Chico?
Yes.
Mr. Feskins?
Yes.
Mr. Chanchuli?
Yes.
Chairman Steiner?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Pass that one down. The next one is 38 Ascot Way. Is anyone here for that particular extension? Seeing no one.
Okay, and this is, you may recall, we discussed this recently in the last meeting. The applicants discovered through the process of remodeling their home a significant mold infestation, required demolition and remediation work. They did request a lengthy extension, and the board was willing to grant a 2-year extension, but not go beyond that at this point. So currently, that's what we're considering, is their application runs through January 2025. We would grant 2 years on top of that.
And they have been notified of our discussion and
Correct.
thoughts, and had the opportunity to be here tonight, and have chosen apparently not to. All right, is there a motion on the 2-year?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Roll call, please.
Yes. Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Zahn,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Loiketz,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Ms. Chifo,
Yes.
Mr. Feskins,
No.
Mr. Chanchuli,
Yes.
Chairman Steiner.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, that one goes down. Next one is 29 Fairview Avenue.
Hi, John Burke, I'm the homeowner.
Okay. And your request is for?
An extension.
A one-year extension. And now I'll just note, I guess Mr. Burke can explain further, but apparently the delay was caused by flooding on an adjacent property that's impacted their construction. I'll just note as well that this is their second request for an extension. It's been extended for 1 year on top of the original application's 1-year timeframe already.
Okay, I must, what have you done, the neighboring property, is that being resolved? What's?
Yeah, it has been resolved. So the issue first appeared in December of '23 when the construction began on the adjacent property behind us. High level, just to flash forward, 8 months after numerous conversations, emails with city officials as well as the builder, they have agreed to remediate it, right? So they've erected a 8-foot retaining wall. They've also added some additional drainage to the property. And we can now say that, yes, we're happy that the issue has been remediated. We're no longer getting flooding in our yard. The reason for the extension request is that the builder that we were going to use for the project is now committed on other projects and has told us that he cannot start until next year.
But you're still using the same contractor?
We're reviewing others at the same time, but ideally, if we can stick with this one that we chose in the past, we'd like to.
All right, have we verified all this with the city?
So I spoke with our engineering department, and they said that they weren't aware of the previous conditions before the construction of the property that you're talking about. So it's a little confusing because they said that they weren't aware of your conditions.
Yeah, so we raised it to a number of individuals with the town. The last response that we got was from a, just 1 minute, I'm looking for the response. What was his name? Just a minute, I have it here, sorry. Sam Koutsoris, I
Okay.
guess, was the one who, so he's the one who replied. I don't know if he's from the engineering department or if he was replying on behalf of the engineering department.
He actually had been on paternity leave, so I did not speak with him. I spoke
What,
with his
what does
assistant.
the correspondence say?
So basically, we raised it to the town and the builder. The builder initially said he wasn't going to do anything about it because he had complied with the engineering plans as per the requirement from the town. We went to the town and Sam's response was essentially that as well. He basically said, there's nothing we can really do here. The engineering department has said that this builder has done everything that he was asked to do. We were then faced, or were essentially told that our only option was potentially litigation against the builder on our own. Thankfully, it did not come to that, and the builder agreed to take additional steps to remediate. That's when he put in the retaining wall and also changed the drainage on the back of his property to route the water to the front towards the street.
And where was the flooding on your property relative to
In
your
our
house?
backyard.
Where, like, relative to your house? Was it impacting your,
Yes,
going
I
towards
can,
your-
I can show you pictures if you want, but yes, it was right up against basically our patio in the back of our house, right where the addition would go.
All right, so we're talking about a second one-year extension. This was memorialized in September of 2022,
Correct.
and you got an extension a year ago?
Yes.
Okay, now we have been on all of our new applications, providing 2 years. So for us to give him another year would bring us up to our current standard of 2 years.
Right.
Yes.
And I don't think yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, what is your construction schedule going forward, assuming they start in the new year? I just want to make sure he's getting enough time.
Well, it likely would not be able to start until the ground thaws, is what the builder told us, so call that March, maybe April of next year.
Well, but that's time to get the building permit
Yes.
within a year,
Yes.
because that's the requirement, not
Yeah,
even
yeah,
the
it's
construction.
Doesn't have to be finished, you gotta get your building permit.
Right,
Yeah.
it's pulling the building permit is the time frame that's at issue.
Yeah.
So an
Why
additional
can't-
year should be enough. to
I'm
do
just
that.
confused why you can't pull the building permit now.
Doesn't have a contract, doesn't have building plans.
You haven't drawn your construction plans yet?
We do have construction plans yet, they're not, I don't think they've been signed, I think is the term. But I think if we were kind of holding off on formally agreeing to do it with the builder on the basis that we could get the extension. If we can't, and we're forced into a situation to go with a different builder, then we might have to switch builders. Ideally, I'd like to get the approval, to get the extension, and then go with him when he confirms he's ready in April.
What's confusing to me is if you have an architect and a contractor that's willing to proceed, you can pull the permit, you could always change it in the future. You don't have to proceed with them. But is the architect or the contractor the issue?
The contractor's the issue. We have a second problem with the architect where he has moved out of state. So we're hoping that we can still work with him, but some of the new builders we've spoken with have said that they would require a architect that's on site, so we might have to switch our architect as well.
Sounds like a one, too.
So do we feel we have enough time by giving him 1 year to get all of these administrative things done, not necessarily the construction?
I sure hope you can do it in a year. It just sounds like you've been through the ringer.
Well, there's always come back in a year and
Yeah.
talk to us.
Hopefully it doesn't come to that.
Yeah. Is there a motion on this item?
So moved.
And your motion is to
Second,
accept the 1 year extension?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Zahn?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Loiketz?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
yes.
Ms. Chifo?
Yes.
Mr. Feskins?
Yes.
Mr. Chanchuli?
Yes.
Chairman Steiner?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. Now to resolutions from memorialization. Stephanie, I think you
Yes.
have them.
I do. Okay.
61 Woodland Avenue, I
Yep.
believe is first.
The first one we have is 61 Woodland Avenue. That's ZB-24-2246, Block 2001, Lot 3, Thanos and Pamela Paganopoulos. The eligible voting members are Chairman Steiner, Vice Chairman Loiketz, Mr. Yuko, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Kieran, Mr. Malay, and Ms. Chifo. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Loiketz,
Yes.
Ms. Chifo,
Yes.
Chairman Steiner.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. The next one we have is 25 Plymouth Road, ZB-24-2248, Block 5101, Lot 8, Christopher and Lisa Varelli. The eligible voting members are Chairman Steiner, Vice Chairman Loiketz, Mr. Yuko, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Kieran, Mr. Malay, and Ms. Chifo. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
I'm sorry? You were?
Yeah.
Okay, and Ms. Zahn, as well as an eligible voting member. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Loiketz,
Yes.
Ms. Chifo,
Yes.
Ms. Zahn,
Yes.
Chairman Steiner.
Yes, I don't see her on the resolution.
No?
Ms. Zahn's not on the resolution.
You know, I had to recuse myself for 61 Woodland.
For 61
Which was the same
Woodland.
day, so it might have been confusing, but I was there for the national one.
Then I guess we have to edit this resolution.
Okay.
I have this is
They were the
25
same day and
Plymouth?
you were here.
We'll,
You're
we'll
right,
confirm
yeah.
the voting members on that and
Yeah.
get an updated version.
Yep, please,
Okay.
just to make sure.
Yep.
Yes, we'll update that one.
That's
Uh,
all I have to do is have the wrong.
Yes.
thing.
Sorry
Who's
about that.
next?
The next one we have is 42 Nob Hill Drive, ZB-24-2238, Block 3005, Lot 3. Mark Shilsky is the applicant. The eligible voting members are Chairman Steiner, Vice Chairman Loiketz, Mr. Yuko, Mr. Nelson, and Ms. Toth.
And
Do we-
this is the one you all got with yellow markers on it, and there's a
But we
new
have
one
the
that we now
updated.
have the updated one, and hopefully you've all had a chance to review the updated numbers,
So I was there that day too.
which is the
So
patio,
if you voted
15
no,
feet.
you're
Got it.
No. Yeah, you can be eligible.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
Okay. And a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Loiketz?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
Chairman Steiner?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. The next one we have, which I believe is our last one, is 24 Huntley Road, ZB-24-2243, Block 3603, Lot 25, and the applicant is Mary Ann Sacco. The eligible voting members are Chairman Steiner, Vice Chairman Loiketz, Mr. Yuko, Mr. Nelson, Ms. Zahn, Mr. Malay, and Ms. Toth. Can I have a motion?
So
Make-
moved.
No, second.
Okay. Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Ms. Zahn,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Loiketz,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Chairman Steiner.
Yes.
The motion carries, and I was wrong, there's one more.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I
Just
kind of
joking.
wondered.
Okay. The last one we have is 556 Morris Avenue. That's ZB-24-2257, Block 701, and that's lots 1, 92, 93, and 94. The eligible voting members are Chairman Steiner, Vice Chairman Loiketz, Mr. Yuko, Mr. Nelson, and Ms. Zahn. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to carry this, or move this.
Okay. And a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Zahn?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Loiketz?
Yes.
Chairman Steiner?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, and then we move on to the minutes of August 5th, which we received in revised copy earlier today.
Yes, so I sent a revised copy earlier today. Hopefully everyone had a chance to look at it. There were just a few edits to the minutes. We can conduct a voice vote for this, but we will exclude those who were not here for the August 5th meeting, which were, I believe, Mr. Feskins, Ms. Toth, and Mr. Kieran, who's not here. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
I'm sorry, who'd that come from? Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Okay, we will move to our public hearings on the three applications that we have in front of us today, and I am excusing myself from the first one and turning it over to our able vice chair.
Should we have all the groups come up and
Yeah.
talk about if they're gonna have witnesses and then
If you'd
how,
like.
if they can do
We
it in
don't
30
need to,
minutes or?
we can skip through that if
And we
you
can
prefer.
skip to that?
Yeah.
We're sure one of them.
77 West End Avenue?
We're gonna swear you in.
All right, we'll just go with the applicants first. If you could raise your right hand, do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And then one at a time, please state your name, spell your last name.
James Fazzari, Fazzari.
Thank you.
And Ryan Grosso, Grosso.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I imagine you'd like to have them tell us a little bit about the application, what they're asking for?
You want to introduce your guests and then tell us a little bit about your project?
Yes. Sorry. We've never done this before, as you can tell.
No worries.
So my name is Ryan Grosso. This is my husband, James Fazzari, and this is our architect, Jim Rementhal. Thanks for hearing us out tonight. We are residents of 77 West End Avenue. We moved to Summit in 2021 when we bought our house. It's a one-story ranch with an unfinished basement. It's 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bath technically, but one of the bathrooms is in the unfinished. One of the bathrooms is in the unfinished basement, and a bedroom is off the kitchen, so it's not really being used as a bedroom right now. We have a 2-year-old son named Ethan, and we're planning to expand our family, so we would like to expand our house with our growing family. We love our neighborhood. It's one of the best parts about Summit. There's so many kids. Our son plays with our neighbors who are the same age. There are kids riding their bikes in the street and scooters, and we really want to make our house our forever home, but we want to make it a little bit larger so that it's more comfortable for our family. We recognize there are some challenges with the stream in the back. We've gone through some pretty extensive work with Jim and with Casey and Keller that we retained to help us understand what's possible and what's not possible on our property, given that we are in a flood zone. He's been in contact, our contact at Casey and Keller has been in contact with the DEP, and I know we've been on your agenda several times, but we think we finally have revised plans that will fit within the scope of what the DEP will allow us to do. So the project before you is a much reduced version of what we had originally proposed. Jim will talk about some of the more specifics, but happy to answer any questions.
Great. And your architect's your only expert witness tonight?
Only expert witness. We do have a letter that he, I think, gave you from Casey and Keller that
Yes.
details his findings. Mike couldn't be here tonight, given he's going through some medical challenges.
No worries. Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I do have one question.
Yes.
So what happened on your property the night of August 18th when we got all that rain so quickly?
Yes. Okay. That was a couple weeks ago. So we have never had an issue with the stream, if that's what you're asking. The stream will rise pretty aggressively, pretty quickly, but it moves very efficiently. So whenever there's heavy rains, we were living in the house during Irene. I think that was the big hurricane a number of years ago. We did not see any water come over the stream bank. We do have a little bit of rainwater issue by our, I think if anyone's been to our property, we have a patio in the back. We do have some rainwater issues there, but the challenge with that is the grading of the property. So if it sloped a little more down towards the stream, I don't think we would have any challenges. The 2 drains that are there are also extremely old. There's one owner of our house before us. It was built in 1954 by her in-laws, we think. And so it's just not been updated in a really long time. And we firmly believe that if we could regrade the property and potentially unclog the pipe that exists, we would not have the issues that we have.
We get water runoff from basically the street
Yes.
that comes down the driveway.
Sure.
And there's a storm grate that's supposed to, basically has a PVC pipe that goes to the creek. It's been there since we own the house. And when the stream gets higher from rain, that kind of backfills and
Doesn't
then
work anymore.
it doesn't work. And since the property isn't graded correctly, the driveway tends to get a little flooded. But other than that, the stream has
Yeah.
never been an issue.
No, and we have a little bit of water that comes to our basement, but we also don't have French drains, so we're pretty confident that if we, and we've had a number of people out to assess that, we're pretty confident that if we remedied that, we would have no water issues.
Thank you.
Great. We'll swear in your architect.
If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
James J. Ramentol, R-A-M-E-N-T-O-L, principal and owner of GRA Architects, Inc., located in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey.
Thank you, and can you briefly describe your background, experience, and 3 boards you've appeared before recently?
Yes. It's been a little while since I've been in front of this board, but I've been in many boards locally in Union County and the surrounding areas. I'm an architect since 1979. I have been in front of numerous boards on a variety of architectural projects, and quite confident that hopefully this testimony will be able to give all the board members proper information on what we've done to date.
Licensed in New Jersey?
Licensed
still
in New
good
Jersey,
standing?
state of New Jersey, and yes, and it's
And-
active.
Thank you. And then the 3 boards, just recent appearances as examples, please.
New Providence, Berkeley Heights, Chatham, just
Thank
to name a few local.
Any questions from the board, or would you like to accept his credentials?
We're willing to accept your credentials. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Ramatol, could you briefly explain or expound upon your client's project, touch on the zoning challenges you face, and could you also give us an update on the status within the process of submitting to DEP2, if you can talk on that a little bit?
Yes, I can,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. First of all, as Ms. Grasso stated, the project was a larger project that was going to have an addition, an expansion of the footprint of the property, as well as a 2-car garage. When we dove into the process with the DEP, and we realized that unfortunately, that part of the flood zone was never really identified with any specific high level of flood elevation, and it was going to be a very exhaustive process, an expensive process. So in working with Casey and Keller, we did most of the legwork on that, the engineer involved. It was determined that what we could do is what we're about to propose tonight, and that is a carport, a deck, and basically that's it, because there's something that maybe you've heard this expression, permit by rule.
Yes.
And there's a few rules that we're going to be able to take advantage of, and I'll go through them categorically. I do have, just to start things off, I wanted to put into the record for the board, I've given everybody a copy of photographs of the property. You'd have that in front of you. And I also have a letter from Casey and Keller, both of which I'd like to put into the record. And however, would that be, I guess, what's called the photographs Exhibit 1A? Would that be appropriate? A1. Okay, A1. And we'll call the letter from Casey and Keller A2. Okay? Thank you for that. So, brief history of as I stated earlier, while we were looking at a much larger project, fortunately with a little bit of creative design, we're able to fit all of the applicant's information within the footprint that we have. The carport is allowing them, there is no garage, as I think everyone may know from the photograph certainly, and there's a desire to at least have the cars under cover for snow, etc. So the carport was a great example, because all we have to do is put basically 4 footings in the ground, structurally supported, add that to the dwelling area, and that works, that solves that problem. The deck, as it is in the City of Summit, requires that to be part of the additional coverage, so that is also in there. We have maybe a series of 6 or 8 footings that have to also be addressed there, all of which are part of the permit by rule acceptance. If anyone's interested in knowing specifics of it, actually, Casey and Keller's letter has an attachment to it that defines each of the various permit by rule requirements. There's a permit by rule 13, there's 14, and I think there's 16, all of which relate to up the allowance of that the DEP will in fact allow. We will still go through that process, and not to mention we will also be in front of the city engineer going through whatever drainage requirements, because it's a large, very voluminous application that the city requires. But I think we can get through that after, if this board accepts this particular application. So, with that said, let me just summarize for the record and also to put on the record. We currently are looking at a property with all in. We're looking at the total coverage of I'm going to go to the application, if you don't mind. I have my notes here. I want to make sure we have it covered. The proposed total coverage is 3,991. It is currently 3,308 square feet, so there's a total increase of 683. That will put us over the grading requirements, so we will be submitting a grading plan, and Casey and Keller will be doing that as the engineer and taking care of that. As Mr. Fazzari mentioned, is that with some great, we do show on our drawing, and we will remove that, we do show a new 6-inch pipe that we thought might be the appropriate thing, but we understand that that's going to involve another DEP approval, so we're going to pull that out of the application so everyone knows that. And we're just going to regrade the property. Regrading is allowed through a swell. It gets us downstream, so it goes from the westerly side of the property downhill and then to the right side of the property, or easterly side. So we'll be able to flow all the water in that direction, as Mr. Fazzari mentioned earlier. That said, we are seeking variances for the following. There is no enclosed parking currently. We're going to be seeking a variance for that. There's no permitted carports, and we're going to be seeking a variance for that. The front yard setback is currently 35 feet allowed, or minimum required, and we are currently at 29.71, and we're not planning to extend that further, but that's what the existing property is. The left side elevation, the left side yard is 15-foot required. We're at 1308. We're not planning to change that. And the right side, another 15 feet is required, and the proposed carport will be at 8.92. So that's another variance requirement. And then the total side yards requires 35% maximum allowed. We're at 24.4 as a result of those side yard setbacks from that perspective. There is also a shed proposed, and since we're not getting a garage, we're going to put a 100 square foot shed to the rear, which is noted on the revised drawings that hopefully everybody has. I'll speak to that in a minute when I go over to the drawings for summary. And that's basically in terms of the overall variance requirements. As far as I'd like to speak specifically to the staff requirements. There were several of them. Everyone hopefully has a copy of it in your packet. The more specifics ones, I'll speak to the zoning since that's the one that's the most voluminous and it just identifies the most important things. That we also received copies from the engineering department, Collier's, as well as the zoning, which I think both are Collier representatives, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct in that assumption? One's Negley. It says Negley. That is Negley. Okay, just wasn't sure, but that's what it says here. Okay. We have no comments from the chief of the police, which would be obvious. There are some comments from the construction official, but those will happen during the construction document phase and all easily be dealt with. The city forester talked about the trees in the area and the fact that we located trees just recently. It's on your documents there, and we will not be dealing with any tree removals. We'll just place the 4 posts or whatever we need to support the shed very simply within that area. No comments from the health department. The historic preservation department pretty much had no comments because it's not an historic zone. And the environmental commission spoke to the comments briefly. If I can locate that just for a moment. Let's see. Yeah. They talked about drainage, mitigation, heat island effects, etc., the things that we typically would expect, environmental considerations, and we'll be dealing with that as part of the construction document phase of the job. So I'd like to go back then to the comments that were made by Ms. Raffet regarding this is an application that she had made some submissions on back in 2023 when we first submitted the documents, but then subject to it being reduced, we wound up reducing it, and some comments were made that are bolded up in her comments. Specifically, item number 6 talks about the shed and the rear covered patio, and that just identifies that that's what's been changed from the prior application. Item number 9 specifically talked about some inconsistencies with the with the calculations from one drawing to another. We have since submitted the drawings that you have in front of you, the 2 copies that hopefully corrected all of those items. And it said it appears that impervious coverage is over 300 square feet, which of course it is, and we're handling that with the stormwater mitigation that we actually show on our drawings as another piece of the documentation. As far as the flood management requirements, as I had mentioned earlier, we will be speaking to the city engineer and making sure that we comply with all the things that are relevant to for the city of Summit's flood management application. Because I think we'll be able to solve the DEP, like I said, through the permit by rule requirements. What I'd like to call your attention to before I go over to the boards and finalize my submission is I want to review the photographs that I've submitted. We're calling that A1. And what I like to do for all my applications is just what you see in front of you, and that is submit the proposed design and then show the existing conditions, not only of the house itself, but the surrounding areas, and how we believe that the application and what we're proposing would be consistent with the neighborhood, and that we're not planning to move any of the building forward the street, even though, because we are seeking a small front yard variance given the existing location. Just for what it's worth, I think some of it, or the documents are pretty obvious, but we'll start with the upper left hand and work our way around clockwise. The upper left shows the left side of the property. The one to the right of it is the front of the house. The one to the right of that is the rear of the property. You'll also notice that these were shot at various different times of the year because this project's been ongoing in our office for a couple of years now. The one to the right is the right side, and that's the driveway side where the carport is going to be located. And you could see, if you look at the front, if you look at I just noticed one thing that I apologize for. Looks like I have 2 right and left side elevations, so that I missed that part, but we'll show you that on the larger application, because apparently that's the case. Then to we'll call it the right side application. That is viewing the property, the house next door to 77, looking down the street. So it's a fair distance away from their property. Then going forward, you'll see the lower right. We'll call it photograph number 7. That is or number 6. Excuse me. That's on the right side. That just shows the left side of the property and how it relates to the property to the left of 77. Then following across the lower right and the lower left are 2 stream shots, just to give you a sense of how the stream relates to the property. You'll see it, obviously this was done a year ago and under normal circumstances. And as Ms. Grasso testified, the stream has never overflowed on their property specifically. And the other thing that make a footnote to that is that the property is a trapezoidal piece of property, but it also, only about 35% of it, because of the way that the stream affects and bisects the property, only 35% of it really is, we'll call it buildable, if you will. The balance of it is wooded, and it butts up against, I believe, New Jersey Transit lines from there. The 2 center shots in the bottom just show various locations of the rear yard. One to the lower left is the one that addresses the rear yard looking out towards the stream, and then the one to the right is from the left side looking at the tree structure where the shed will be located. And then following up, the last 2 images on the left side is showing the left-hand property adjacent to 77 as it relates to it, and then another was more of a street shot down West Avenue, so that you could see how the properties run together. So that's a quick overview of the photographs. I want to see if I can slide over to the images and then go through that, and then that'll finalize my application. brought with me both the current proposed application, which of the drawing, which is a T1 sheet. That is in front of you. Do I need to put that in as an exhibit? Because
Yes.
it's relative, okay. So we'll call that A3, since it was submitted just this week. And that satisfied the various requirements of the engineer's report that was sent to us back on 8/23 last week. It does show the AC units, which was a comment that requested. It shows, we adjusted the shed a little bit because once I had the tree located, we had to make sure that we missed the trees. And by the way, this is not a survey. I did take measurements of the trees, so they're approximate, but they're fairly accurate relative to where they're located on the property, the trees in question. We have the carport shown as a shaded area. The deck is in the rear, also shown. And we are doing a wraparound porch, which you'll see in the images that we have going forward. So we're calling that A3. A4 is going to be what we're calling SP1, which identifies more specifically, and this will be, we're going to call this A4. And this identifies various things like the property survey itself. It talks about what we're demolishing on the property. And then it gives more definition to what the proposed grading plan is going to be. This is my version of the grading plan, but we're going to seek that detail from Casey and Kell in a more technical way, because that's, I think, a requirement. 200 for property owners. We did renotice because of the time frame. The applicant actually did the notice this time around because I was away on vacation that week, so that was taken care of. So that covers the summary of that. This was the former one. We'll step that by. Okay, so now these are documents that you have and have been on the record. This is the A1 sheet, which is we'll call this the foundation or the basement sheet, because it identifies where the column locations are, where the deck footings will be, and how the lower level sits. There is an existing portion of the home that is actually on columns. That's part of the kitchen projection, which will remain. And we're just going to reinforce the columns with a more appropriate structure to make sure that, because it's handling the second story now over the top of that. There was a half bath there. Now we're going to make that a full bath down below. And we are going to finish the entire basement and put another sump pump in that area just for additional support and confirmation. The first floor, as you'll see, shows the stair going to the second floor. The kitchen pretty much remains where it is. We just opened up the plan so that it gives a more common flow to the property. And the deck will have two locations, one off the kitchen and another one off the family room. And this space here, we're calling it study slash guest bedroom, because if there's an event that we do need someone else that comes in, but it'll just give the opportunity to be either or. The living room stays where it is, the dining room stays where it is, and then this L-shaped covered porch gives a little bit more of an architectural feel to the property. Also, we are adding another stair. By the way, I might add, we're not actually adding additional impervious because there's an existing stair that we're just going to repurpose and utilize. So we're not adding any footprint, because that obviously triggers a potential DEP requirement. So that's the first floor. Second floor is a series of 4 bedrooms. There'll be a master primary suite here, and then 3 bedrooms, a hall bath, and a small, I believe we have, I'm mistaken somewhere. We still have, we should have it somewhere. No, I guess no, we actually, in the larger scheme, we did have a laundry area, but we eliminated that because of the reduction in the footprint. So that's the second floor, very simply. And then lastly, now I'm showing you A4, which shows the front and right side elevation. The front being the 2-story element. The chimney that's there now will remain. It'll just be raised to accommodate whatever the building requirements are. You'll see the small shed roof that wraps around the covered porch. This shows the carport. Architecturally, it's very simply done to be able to keep the cars from getting wet and or snowed on. And on this side, we have the right elevation. This is the right view of the carport and the wraparound porch, as you can see. Then finally, the A4.1 sheet shows the rear elevation with the carport to the left, and of course the left side elevation, which I showed twice on my photographs. But that's what it would look like in its finished product. So that's pretty much the summary of the application as is. I'm certainly open to any questions that the board has, and that's the end of the formal presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Ramatal. We'll have questions from our board professionals, from the board itself, and then from the audience. So I'll open it up to the board professionals. Ed, Mary, do you have anything you want to ask of this witness?
Sure, thanks. Since this is going to need a grading plan, and I know maybe this is a Casey and Keller kind of question, but what kind of drainage facilities are going to be on there? Is there a seepage pit? What are they planning on doing?
Actually, yes, let me go back over to the drawing.
Sure.
We were, while we don't have it on the application, let me go back to the process would be, it's either going to be a trench drain that will either follow the line of the existing 4-inch pipe, which kind of makes sense, assuming we can get the pipe to flow to the stream. And if not, it's going to be some form of seepage pit or detention drain. Typically, when I do the design, I usually do it with a trench drain, but we'll be working with that with Casey and Keller on that, and of course they'll work with the city engineer to get that accomplished.
Okay, so, and one of the things that happens generally, and I don't know if the board understands this, but when you're putting in a seepage pit, and this gets done by the board, the city engineer doesn't usually review the seepage pit design, so that would have to be reviewed by me, but there's no mechanism for that to happen, for it to come back to me. So, so it's a little difficult for you guys to put that in as a condition of approval for me to take a look at it once it leaves here. So that, I don't know how you want to handle that, but that's what I've been told by the city engineer that we should.
That you should be reviewing
That
those as well?
I should be reviewing it, but the problem is that after it leaves here and you guys go through your resolution, it doesn't come back to me for review on a residential application.
So I think we can make that just a clear condition of the application, that the grading plan, or is there additional particular plans that you'll need to see?
Well, yeah, I mean, it would have to be the drainage.
The drainage.
Drainage portion
So
of it.
a drainage
You know?
plan will be submitted to the board engineer for review and approval.
100%.
Okay?
Can I say a few things?
We're gonna
Oh, okay.
let
Well,
professionals
it
do-
has something
Sure.
to do with what she's talking about.
Sure.
And the reason I know this is because I owned my grandfather's house at 107 West End up until 2008. And I went through similar things with because I was thinking about moving there, selling where I'm at, moving there. Turned out I didn't do it, but I had to go through all this DEP stuff. And what I found out is if any of this property is in the floodplain, as far as I remember them telling me, you're not allowed to do any kind of water delineation that's in the floodplain. So do you know how much of this property is in the floodplain? Is it all in the floodplain? Is the front of the house, because the floodplain, when it was explained to me, runs different points going through that whole West End Avenue. So some houses, the front of the house is in the floodplain, some of them, the rear of the house is in the floodplain. Do you know exactly what part of this house sits in the floodplain?
Well, I can only speak to it in general terms, because when we went through the process of trying to determine what the high flood elevation is, I think in Summit it's an extra foot or two above what the DEP allows, if I'm not
I don't
mistaken.
think that has anything to do with the floodplain.
Well, it kind of does, because we couldn't do what we wanted to do unless we went through a very exhaustive design analysis, et cetera, with the DEP. So to try to answer your question is that I don't have a high water level elevation because this area at West End Avenue has never been mapped recently. So with that said,
Well, that's what I'm getting at.
that's why we backed off what we did.
Because it was, when that flood, and I think they told me it was around 1975 when they put these properties in the floodplain. So what they did is, they don't do a survey on each property. When they designed that flood map, it was just, everybody was in the floodplain. And I know there's maybe one or two houses that are in their area who had them removed from the floodplain by doing some, elevations, submitted to the state, and they were removed from the floodplain.
We have a LOMA from FEMA. Is that
If
what you're
if you
referring
could
to?
talk into the mic, please.
We have a LOMA from FEMA that basically, when we bought the house, confirmed that it wasn't in.
Okay, I think your address might have been one of the two that was,
We have it here.
so if it's not in the floodplain, then there should be
That was
no
the-
restriction on you from doing the garage as opposed to the carport.
Well, the
Yeah,
letter
it's in
says
flood
that
zone.
the whole house is in the flood zone, this letter today.
Yeah.
So, and just to be clear, I have not seen that letter,
Well, not if
so
he
I
has
have not
a
reviewed it
loan.
all.
So this,
Yeah.
can I give
Because
it
there
to you?
are some houses on that street that were removed from the floodplain.
Well, their engineer letter to land surveyor today says places the house within the flood hazard area. So I just want to clarify what that means, because I
Yeah.
think what you're saying is if you're in the flood hazard area, a seepage pit is not
The-
allowed,
the-
basically is what you're saying.
Even
Yeah.
grading.
The engineer had recommended the grading and doing, what is it called, Jim?
Swell.
A swell.
We'll create a swell to allow
Rather
the
than
water to find its way.
doing a pipe, as Jim had put in the plans.
But you have a LOMA that says.
So this
you're-
LOMA we were given this when we bought the house.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons for buying the house.
Because when I went through this, I know there was 2 or 3 houses up in your area where they had gone through an engineering survey, submitted it, and they
So
were
I think
removed.
they had submitted that, and then a number of houses had kind of tacked on and gotten this to, but this is,
So if you have a LOMA releasing you from the floodplain, you're not restricted on what you can do.
yeah,
I think that's something that, here's my concern, and I feel bad for you guys. Everything that we need to see should be submitted to our engineers.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Otherwise,
Right.
we rely on our professionals.
Have you seen a copy of this,
LOMA?
this,
so this is
LOMA?
supposed to be submitted to the town. So
Yeah,
this, when it was
that's part of
filed,
this application? Because I've
That
not
comes
seen
from the
it.
I've never
state.
seen it.
That LOMA comes from the state.
yeah, our engineer did not say it was relevant.
I would respectfully disagree with that.
Well, given that NJDEP was the one with the issue, it seems to me that they're not considering that to be.
But
Yeah, but
the-
if they
FEMA
have that LOMA,
supersedes
if they have that
New Jersey
LOMA,
DEP.
Well,
I didn't- yeah.
so not quite. They each have their own areas of what they deal with, and DEP, if they are determining it to be a flood hazard area, which is its own separate set of regulations, and they say that, that you cannot have a garage or you
wanna
cannot
see
have
that?
any particular
you wanna see
structures.
that LOMA form?
So
Not
that's also what I
necessarily, but-
understood, was that they had kind of two separate jurisdictions, which
Yes.
got us in this whirlwind of figuring out, okay, what does FEMA say we're in, and then what does the NJDEP say we're in, and what are the requirements for both?
Right,
Because with
and-
that
and-
form there, you don't even need to have flood insurance.
So, and
Yeah, we don't have flood insurance.
so flood insurance and flood hazard areas are, the floodplains versus flood hazard area, they're two different designations, so just keep that in mind. And keep in mind that their application is subject to the DEP's jurisdiction over the flood hazard area. So nothing we can say can absolve them of the obligation of getting approval from
No, but he
DEP
has
or
the
upper.
document that does.
But
That-
we
that
just
says
went
it's-
through this on
That says it's a flood, not a
Springfield
floodplain.
Avenue. Remember that
Right.
garage? She also had a LOMA that required her not to submit to DEP.
Right.
Or require a permit. I
Because
don't know.
I even had people from the state come down to, when I was at 107. And he's got the golden document right there that releases him from everything. His property is not on the
Well,
flood
Let me,
hazard.
I
So
guess,
we're
let me take
getting
a quick look
sidetracked.
at, yeah, a little bit.
The
I-
issue is, do we hear the rest of this case based on the variances that they're seeking, right?
So, and.
But
what I-
understanding that their project was reduced in scope because of their interactions with NJDEP, which I think this document might.
I don't agree with that. This is from FEMA, and it's a letter of the FEMA's map amendments, but FEMA's maps and FEMA's floodplain maps don't necessarily have to coincide with DEP's designation of flood hazard areas. And so FEMA may say it's not technically within their floodplain. DEP's still going to say you have to comply with our flood hazard area if it's within the flood hazard area. And that's my understanding of what the applicant is telling us tonight, that their engineer has determined it's in conjunction with DEP, it's within the flood hazard area. So they're stuck complying with that. Now, if the board wants to see additional documentation to the effect that, or potentially additional engineering testimony that it's within the flood hazard area and they're bound by those regulations, we can ask that they provide that. But this doesn't answer that question.
The one question I have is whether or not they're allowed to do the grading in the backyard, because based on my review of the site plan, the front yard may not be, per this letter, getting from Casey Keller, outside of the flood hazard area. But I'd like to see testimony or a grading plan for us to be able to say, yeah, you can do what you want to do. I think the design, given the constraints, you figured something out that was pretty interesting. But this, I don't know how you can comply with the grading and that without seeing more information.
And, well, that's something else to keep in mind too, is that we can approve what they're asking for tonight from a zoning perspective, if the board wanted to go down that route. But DEP still has to sign off on a DEP compliance perspective. If DEP ultimately says, no, you cannot grade it, or you cannot have a trench, then they can't proceed with the application because it'll be in violation of DEP's regulations. So just understand that DEP's jurisdiction is above this board. It's not something we can necessarily address, and it's a separate requirement that you comply with those. So it's not something we have to condition, conjunction with the DEP application. They can proceed separately with that, but they're doing so at their own risk, that DEP will say no, and then they've wasted their time here before the board.
And just to be clear, we need the grading plan because we are adjusting more than 300 square feet of impervious coverage, is that right?
It's the disturbed area.
That's right.
Disturbing.
Or disturbing it,
Which the
Yeah.
deck includes.
which the deck includes.
The deck is
Correct.
considered impervious coverage. So we're not really.
So the reason okay. So the steps would be checking with Casey and Keller to confirm with the DEP if we can do anything with regards to grading. And if we couldn't, then would be determining if there's another alternative.
Yes.
Well, you did say that you were planning on doing grading, right, in the very
yes.
beginning, so,
And
yeah.
I imagine that Casey and Keller has confirmed this with the DEP already.
Because he's seen this design. We
He's
sent
seen
him
the
this
design, yeah.
He has said,
And he
yes, this is.
And he recommended the grading and the swale, so he said that was permissible.
If I might also just add, in an email that Michael Anzafama, Casey Keller sent to us with this attachment, he indicated that we cannot put the pipe in, so that I didn't even put that into the, I stated that earlier, but he said you can create a swell, a natural swell, to allow the water to find its way to the stream. That was the way he was planning to approach it with a grading plan. And subject to, of course, the board's review and approval, that would certainly be something that would be in the resolution as a requirement before we go any further, in addition to whatever other requirements are requested by the board.
All right, so we're gonna have to assume that any and all grading, drainage is gonna be compliant with whatever DEP requires, whatever the city engineer requires.
Well, so what we would do is we would require, for example, a grading plan to be submitted to city engineer, drainage plan to be submitted to our board engineer, and we can still grant that application. We don't have to assume it's compliant with DEP. They have the obligation of going to DEP and seeking any DEP approvals for this application. If DEP says no, then they're back to the drawing board, and they would have to come back before the board to seek any other amended approval from a zoning perspective.
Okay.
And, you know, one other thing was and I think Stephanie and I had gone back and forth on this, and I don't know if it's been finalized about getting a floodplain permit from the city, from the floodplain administrator. Do you know if has that been discussed or not yet?
Well, I mean, doesn't that happen after, if this gets approved, doesn't that happen after that?
Well, it would normally happen, it normally gets screened for the floodplain before it comes to the board. This kind of got caught in a little glitch.
No, it was.
Okay.
The city engineer has seen it.
Oh, good,
So,
okay.
yeah, so he is aware of the application, and he did, I spoke with him briefly today over email, or maybe it was a few days ago, and he did agree that this is in a floodplain, so you do have to go through all the appropriate approvals. He mentioned there being ways to, I guess you would have to provide evidence if you believe it's not in a floodplain.
That's what he's got right there, the moment.
Yeah.
Well, and
So
again,
that
let's
was
not
really
confuse
it.
floodplain with flood hazard area,
Right.
and
It is the applicant's intent to comply with all of the required city criteria, as stated earlier. So, again, we won't be able to file for a building permit until all those other items are in fact addressed and agreed to and approved by the city professionals.
Mary, do you have anything else for this
So,
witness?
Yeah, I'll just continue on with some other things unless do we have any more we wanted to talk about with that? Is that all right? I noticed that there is some gutters on the carport. Where would those gutters be going to?
Those gutters, depending on what we're permitted to do, since everything is running downhill, the street is higher than the property and the grade, they will be going, eventually finding their way to either the existing, either the swale and or the existing drainage that's on the property right now. There are two catch basins that are there, and as Mr. Vazzari mentioned, one's, at least at the very least, is partially clogged. The property seems to drain properly, as he had said to me, when there's a relatively modest rainfall. Heavy rainfall, it does back up a little bit, so it just takes a little time to get there. But eventually it does find its way to the stream, because there is an outflow pipe that's been there for years.
So when those downspouts come down the side of the carport, are they discharging to the surface, or are they going to be piped underground to somewhere?
Well, we're gonna, whatever, ideally, we'd like to pipe them underground, but they have to be piped someplace that's still compliant with both the DEP and the criteria.
Right,
So,
right.
and everything is flowing in the direction of the rear property, so we just, the regrading of that will accommodate that. And if for some reason we need to place some kind of a drain within the footprint of the pavement, which is really where it will go, we're going to attempt to either outflow that to the swale or outflow it to the existing drain that's in the patio area currently.
Okay. Okay, so I guess there's a few subject twos, so.
Okay, great. Ed?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My questions go back to the issue of the flood hazard elevation. It seems that, and this is the first time I've seen this correspondence from Casey and Keller, Exhibit A2, it identifies that the home is within the flood hazard elevation area. So therefore, regardless of whether or not we had that exemptions for the permission of that, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to make any assumptions, but I think you're proposing the carport and the lack of enclosing 2 parking spaces are probably the most important of the variances that I'm seeing here. And so the issue I think the board needs to hear about is that I think you're trying to propose that you have essentially a hardship on the property as a result of the floodplain. And I can't put words in your mouth. I would need you guys to, I guess, opine or comment on that. But if that's the case, then I believe this letter offers some expert determination of that by Casey and Keller, Michael Lanzafama. Probably need a sign, it's signed, but not a sealed copy of this document. The board could ask for additional testimony from that expert if they felt that there was questions regarding that. But I guess my first question, is this more of a hardship application, or are you proving that the benefits outweigh the detriments?
I'll speak to that. I think, well, first of all, the hardship is the property and the flood plain. If you go to that A2 letter, which of course you're getting for the first time, page 2 or page 63 of that, you'll go to a permit by rule number 14, construction of a partial open structure. Authorizes the construction of a one or more partially open structure with roof such as a carport, covered patio, pole barn, et cetera, with items. The structure is not located within the, assuming that, and the structure is not located with a floodway. The structure is not enclosed with walls or any other flood area design flood elevation. The roof is supported solely by poles, or in this case, 4 columns, and is in or cantilevered with other structures. The footprint of all structures and constructed under the permit by rule does not exceed 5,000 square feet, which it does not. Number 5, no fill is placed in the flood hazard area except for the poles themselves, that were planned to just simply excavate 4 columns in the existing asphalt footprint that's there now. And then lastly, any clearing, cutting, and other removals of riparian zone vegetation is limited to actively disturbed areas.
So in your opinion, this is not within a floodway of the street?
That is what I believe Mr. Lanzafama he hasn't stated in his letter, but it's clear that's this is why we think we could build what we're proposing to build as a permit by rule.
And it seems historically that that's probably the case, if they have not seen flooding impacting that area as a result of the floodway itself. If the board may know the difference between the floodplain and the floodway. The floodway cannot be blocked at all with anything. That's the most critical area for flooding that has to occur. The floodplain does have these other permit by rule adjustments that are permitted, and I'll defer to your board engineer with regard to those details. But from a planning standpoint, what I was asking the questions about is to make sure that the board is hearing whether or not this is a hardship variance where a particular condition specifically for a piece of property applies in this instance. And I think that's what the applicant is proposing to the board. In addition to that, what I was going to ask is that, can you talk about the location of the carport as far as where it is on the property and its relationship to the neighboring properties and things of that nature, in order to give the board some detail on that?
I certainly can. I'm going to go back to my drawing over there, which identifies it. Everyone should have a copy of it. On drawing the T1, the shaded square to the right, or to the east of the property, is where it's actually going to be sitting on top of existing asphalt pavement. So we're not actually amending. We have a small piece of asphalt we're adding to it just to be able to get both cars underneath the carport. And of course, the side yard setback was one of the other things that we talked about, which is a variance, which puts it at the 8.92 feet off the right side or easterly property line.
But its position on the lot is back towards the rear of the building?
It's set back towards the rear of the property. I could give you a dimension if you need it. It's not on this drawing, but I could certainly scale it. It's back a good 15 to 20 feet from the front of the house.
Okay. Is it attached to the house?
It will be attached vis-a-vis a roof, because we want to make sure that when they exit the car and we go up the steps or into the house, there's a cover from the carport to the existing home, just for simple rain and or snow.
And looking at the right side elevation that's provided on sheet A4.
Yes.
Can you talk about the relationship of the carport to the front yard and the grading relationship?
Okay.
As it relates to that?
You'll see on grade A4, the right side elevation, you'll see a one-story gabled structure, which is the gable roof to complement and complement the architecture of the existing home or the proposed home. And you'll also see a set of stairs that goes up, and that'll be undercover as well, that goes up into the covered porch. That's the way to get around to the front door. There is no other access to that, even though I think there's a door shown there, but that's going to be removed. We talked about that. What you're obviously seeing is carport and items beyond. There's a piece of the deck beyond that, and you'll see the stairs coming down from the deck. But for the most part, all of that, what you see there, is the carport itself. It's a simple gable roof structure with a flat structure ceiling above it.
And how does this relate to the street as far as the elevation is concerned? It's lower than the street?
It's lower than the street. While these, I eliminated the elevation lines here. We did do an assessment of that, but the street line, you can see it gradually going towards the rear, and that's the way the actual grading plan would show certain elevations that might be helpful from that perspective, but it definitely goes to the rear of the property from the street down.
During your testimony, you addressed the Environmental Commission's letter. You had indicated, and I was just trying to make sure this was clear for the record, that you'll deal with some perviousness of some of the pavement. Is that a proposal at this point that the board's considering?
Actually, in essence, because we're putting a roof over top of existing asphalt, we're sort of swapping impervious coverage, if you will. But we weren't planning to do any particular pervious.
Okay.
For the record, we're not planning to do any pervious pavement unless the board sees fit otherwise.
I want to make sure that was clear.
That's
and then
correct.
you also identified there's no tree removal.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's the question.
Just touching on that, along those lines, can you elaborate a little bit more about any negative impacts that this proposed carport will have on any of the adjacent properties, perceived negative impacts to the neighborhood, or reasoning why the board should...
There we go. Vanna, where's Vanna? I'll attempt to do that as soon as I get this thing to tighten up. There we go. Okay. Thank you. Would you be very to repeat the question?
Certainly. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on any potential negative impacts or your opinion on lack of negative impacts that this carport would have on adjacent properties, and how it's reconciled with the fact that carports are prohibited under the board's or the city's ordinances?
Well, if this weren't a flood zone area, we'd be looking at a two-car garage, but there's also a front-loaded two-car garage, and many of the properties in the neighborhood, if anyone knows that area, most homes in that area have front-loaded at least one-car garages. Some actually have two that are in fact recessed and detached. But from a negative perspective, we believe that since the carport is in fact towards the rear of the property, as well as the neighboring property to the east, there's quite a distance between the Fazzari property and the next door neighbor. And in fact, their particular driveway and garage is actually in the rear of the property, as it turns out. So I don't believe that what we're proposing will have any negative impact to the neighborhood at large, because it is in fact recessed and set back, so as you drive up and down the street.
All right. Thank you.
We'll open it up to questions from the board.
I have like a very basic question, I think is really for our attorney. I don't recall having been in a flood hazard area provision before. Could you please walk us through permits by rule?
So, yes, generally, the permits by rule, as it's been explained, they allow, normally, if you were within the flood hazard area, you have to apply to DEP and obtain a particular permit for whatever you're proposing. The permits by rule allow for basically exemptions where DEP will sign off without going through the formal application process. You no longer have to obtain a formal permit as long as you comply with those limitations there. So, but if you stray outside of the bounds of the permits by rule, DEP will say you're illegally acting, you're contrary to the regulations, and then they can take enforcement action. And then I'll just reiterate, one of the terms and conditions of our resolution is the fact that all other outside governmental agency requirements still apply. You're still bound to apply to the state in this case, to make sure you comply with the DEP's flood hazard area regulations. So we're in no way granting them relief from those requirements. If they are asserting that DEP is willing to allow this within the permit by rule exception, then that's
Okay.
the DEP's prerogative.
And the
on that.
permit by rule exception then also does not allow them to do certain things because they're in a floodplain area that we otherwise wouldn't allow them to do.
Correct. It doesn't supersede our
Okay.
zoning requirements.
Right.
Okay,
Meaning our zoning
We
is
are-
still our zoning
Yes,
requirement.
we're not forced to accept something because it falls within permit by rule, if we find that the zoning criteria have not been met.
okay, thank you. How far off the ground is the deck going to be? What kind of clearance will there be under it?
Approximately 5 feet,
Okay, not high enough. Okay,
which of course will meet all the criteria as far as railings, et cetera, that are building code.
right. Now, I was hoping to be able to go somewhere else, but I can't.
Can you say that? How high? 5 feet?
5 feet.
5 feet above, yes, according, this is calculated from my quarter scale plan. And I'll say approximately 5 feet, but certainly no more than 6. Clearly.
So, I'm just trying to picture, when you come out of the first floor, is there a step down or?
There's actually on drawing A4.1, there's, and maybe the photographs will help with that too. There's a stair that comes down from that point, because there is an elevation change from the back of the property where the deck is going to be. There's actually about another, call it 18 inches to, let's say less than 2 feet, so that we have a stair that comes right down to the existing patio.
When are you coming out of the house? Is it level with the first floor? If I were to come out those.
Yeah, it might be 4 to 6 inches
Okay.
lower, just because I do that typically for any
Yeah.
deck.
If you look at the drawing, this one right here, the back of our house, this first floor will be level with the first floor. There's a significant drop between
Yeah, I see that.
the first floor and.
Yeah,
the
I was at the site, I just trying to
Yeah.
picture the.
It's almost like another floor can be below our first floor.
Then, what else? On your, the proposed grading plan? I don't know which number it
That's
is.
a SP1.
SP1. Where was it, does it show on here where the swale is? Is that what this, to the right of the shed, is that?
Well, the swale has not yet been designed, because it's sort of the architect's grading plan, but we're planning to propose because of the. Okay. Let's try it again. Since we did what we'll call an architecture grading plan, we're
Okay.
going to have our engineer do a more formal grading plan that'll be reviewed by the city engineer. But to answer your question of where the location is going to be, we're going to probably place it along the easterly side of the property, on the property, of course, between the shed and the fence line there, and eventually will find its way to the street.
Wouldn't that be the west side though? Am I mistaken?
Well, north is up, so I think, did I say east?
You did.
I think it's east,
Okay. So it'd be on that side?
this side, east side. Because the property actually slopes, it's kind of a flat property in this, in the rear
Yeah,
yard.
yeah.
But there is
Driveway,
definitely
little
some,
driveway.
if you look at, there should be some, you go to the SP, where the grades are shown. There are several, if you follow, some of these are upside down, I apologize, it's the way that the surveyor prepared it, but you'll see certain grades, so between the carport or the back edge, we'll call it the northeast edge of that, we'll eventually find our swell to the drain, up to the street.
So I just had a question about, and this, you may not have the answer to this, Maria may, but just because, as was mentioned before, typically when we see these plans, we do have the stormwater management plan, we do have the swale, we do have the landscape architecture plan. That's generally part of this. We don't have it, and it's a little bit of, it sounds a little, you know, rough right now, that it actually hasn't been planned. Although you knew you had a requirement for stormwater management. You just didn't come and present that to us. And earlier you said that you had it, but it sounds like that plan hasn't actually been developed yet. So the question I have, because you mentioned possibly a trench drain, possibly a seepage pit, is are you even allowed to have a trench drain that directly discharges to the stream? Like typically, that's not stormwater management, just sending it off your property to somebody else's. It's typically managed on the property. So, you know, I just want to have a little bit more, and I just want to say that for the record, because I know this plan is supposedly coming your way, Maria.
Well, that, and I completely agree with you, which is why I was saying that the city engineer doesn't generally like to have that as a condition of approval, because there's not the mechanism for it to come back to me. So if you were to say in there that, you know, subject to my review of the stormwater management, you know, there's still a lot of unanswered questions about, is that swale allowed to go into the stream? I mean, I touched on that in the letter too. I don't know if they're allowed to, you know, change their pipe that's in the backyard. I don't know if they're allowed to use their roof runoff and just put it into the stream in the back. I don't know if they're gonna be able to get permission to do that. They might, but I don't know that. And the same thing with the seepage pit. I don't know if the seepage pit's gonna work. You know, would they have to come up with some other solution? That is, it's a big unanswered question at this point.
I would just mention that almost every house on that street drains into the creek. They all do.
That might be historic, though.
Right,
It's like
right.
what's
You're not gonna make
currently
them go and
allowed.
do something now, but if somebody is looking to change something, you know, there might be some restrictions by the DEP on that.
I agree with what's being said. I was gonna bring that up, because I forgot, that's what we originally talked about when you had your report, that then we went somewhere else. I'm a little concerned about that.
May I address that, the board, just to respond to Ms. Ruffy's comments? The seepage pit would typically not drain directly into the stream, because I don't believe that's permitted. My original design, architecturally speaking, was to put a new 6-inch line to be able to capture all of that drainage, but that was, Mr. Lanzafama stated, we can't do that by rule, okay? So with that said, what we're going to do is create a swale, as I discussed, on the easterly side, and whatever detention that we need in terms of seepage pit, et cetera, we can always outflow the seepage pit into the swell, and then eventually find its way when it gets to that level of fill, if you will. And that's how that would occur. That would be my architectural position. That will all be addressed by Mr. Lanzafama, and I'm sure that'll be done in compliant with both state and/or city requirements.
So, you know, and I appreciate that right now what's going on is there's a pipe that's going down there, but I also hear that it doesn't always function properly. And you know, putting a swale in sounds like a great idea, but that could cause, you know, significant erosion to the stream, you know, without something to mitigate the energy that's coming off of that amount of water that's coming from a 3-inch storm. So, or a 5-inch storm like we had a few weeks ago.
Right.
So there's concerns about the kind of design, because it is a bit of an unknown. And, you know, it would be good if there was some plan from the engineer for us to be able to review and comment on.
Well, it will be empirically calculated properly, as is noted, and while the mechanism doesn't necessarily get back to your department, we'll certainly, you know, be able to accommodate that as one of the required steps in approval from that perspective.
And just to enter again for the record, we have been working with Mike, but he has been having some medical procedures, so he did see the comments but was not able to address them given that, so we have that.
I think the road we're going down right now, at least the sense I'm getting from these questions, is that the board's gonna wanna hear from your civil engineer.
Yeah, that's right.
So it might be in your best interest to table this tonight, come back with him, come back with a fully thought of drainage plan, grading plan, and any additional information in your interaction with the NJDEP, probably really beneficial.
And if I could just ask one more question that might possibly be helpful is, I don't know if you've done a camera inspection of the pipe that you're talking about having possibly some blockage, but you're not sure if it has blockage. If you do that, you might find that the pipe is collapsed and, you know, it needs to be replaced or something, but that's also helpful information for you when you're creating a drainage design.
Okay, so at this point, what I'm hearing is a request to carry this meeting with, I assume without further notice is
Right.
acceptable to the board.
Yes.
Yeah.
Until, do we have an available date?
We can do October 21st.
Is that enough time to,
Do you want to check with your engineer and then
The only
get,
factor is whether or not he's gonna be technically able to do this for us in that time period. Can we check with him and?
October, sorry, date?
21st.
or maybe someone in his office who's also a licensed civil engineer can maybe
Yeah.
stand in his place?
and if you run in, because we need to schedule a particular date tonight for the purposes of avoiding additional notice from you. So if we say October 21st, and if you run into issues and want to request to carry further, at that point, we can consider that request on the 21st itself. What we'd also need to hear is, are the applicants waiving the timeframes for the board to act on this matter?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other, before we get into the, obviously we discussed the drainage at length, are there any other comments, architecture or otherwise, that we can respond to as far as putting it into the record, or do we want to wait for that grading plan?
I think we'll wait.
Okay.
So we need a motion then. We have a motion to carry to October 21st.
Do you want to open to the public?
Oh.
Is
We're
that necessary?
continuing with the testimony, I guess.
So they'll have an opportunity.
Yes.
And then they'll have the full breadth of the testimony in order to respond to and ask questions.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Do we hear that
Um,
motion?
I would make a motion to carry this to October
Second.
21st.
Vice Chairman Loikett?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Zahn?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
Ms. Chico?
Yes.
Mr. Feskins?
Yes.
Mr. Chanchuli?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Yeah.
I was sworn in 610 Springfield. They had a Roma, and they had a letter from the city engineer saying that was enough. They didn't have to go to
I share mine with you, but I don't think you'll-
I'll look it up at DEP, see if it's in
the
this.
fountain's not working.
I'll double that.
Guys, I have to recuse from Beacon. Yeah. You still have enough, right?
I think so. Yeah.
You still have 7, right?
Yeah, should be fine.
I hope so.
Joe might have left.
I was so good that he just decided to walk out of the building.
Well, you didn't go to Winter. Did I say that? I didn't say that.
You guys looking for a break?
We could take a short one.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, take a 5-minute break, we'll reconvene at 9:10.
Yeah.
More cases to go. I'll call it back to order. We're ready for 71 Pine Grove.
All right, we'll start with the applicants. I'll swear you in, just the applicants at this point. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Yes. Please state your name one at a time and spell your last name.
My name is Katie McCormack, M-C-C-O-R-M-A-C-K.
And I'm Christian McCormack, M-C-C-O-R-M-A-C-K.
Thank you.
Okay, can you tell us just a quick summary of what it is? And I'm assuming you're going to turn it over
Yeah.
and let him carry the water.
Okay, so by way of introduction, I'm Christian and Katie. We're the owners of 71 Pine Grove Avenue. This November, we will have been in the home for 4 years. It's our first home. We love our home. We love our neighborhood. We've made wonderful relationships with our neighbors. And it's a home we want to be in for a long time. Over these 4 years, been lucky enough to start a family. We've got a 2.5-year-old girl who starts school this Friday. And then we are blessed to have just welcomed a beautiful baby boy 10 weeks ago. We need more space in our home. We've always sort of envisioned adding to our kitchen area downstairs. We come from big families. We like to entertain. We like to cook. And currently in our home, we can't have anyone in our family in our kitchen. So we've always had this vision that we grew up with our family in our kitchens as we did. And then additionally, we'd like to put a bedroom above that if we in fact do want to continue to grow our family, or lucky enough to, or for the interim host our grandparents. So we're represented by Tom Conway, who will answer any further questions you may have.
Okay, any questions for the applicants?
Well, I do, just because I know part of the plan has adding to your driveway a bit. And when I visited the property, there were 2 cars parked in the driveway. Your kids don't sound old enough to have their own. So what's it like getting in and out of your garage?
Difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult. 1 car in, 1 car out. So it's a bit more difficult than when we'd like it to be. So any extra space we could have in our driveway would be helpful.
Like, I can't turn the car around myself. He has to do it for me. We're very limited with the amount of space. Turning a car around to get in and out of the garage and in and out of the driveway is difficult.
Okay. Well, your architect can deal with the physics of it, but you can talk to the experience.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant from our professionals? No? Okay, then we will move on to your architect. And would you swear him in and certify?
Yep.
Like we.
You
We've
can
never
raise your
done
right
this
hand.
before.
Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Thomas Conway, C-O-N-W-A-Y.
And I'll note for the record, you've appeared before us a number of times, including recently. Any changes to your credentials since the last time you were here?
Not since last month, no.
I imagine the board would like to accept you once again.
Any issues from the board members? Seeing none, please proceed.
Great, thank you. So, like we talked about last month on Woodland, the properties are very small and the houses are very dense. In this section of Pine Grove, even though the property is of the right size, these properties on the basically west side of Pine Grove Avenue are in the R15, and they are all set back dramatically from the road rather than the typical required front yard setback, which would be 35. This is at 75, which exacerbates the problem. So that's the pattern of the whole neighborhood. It's that whole side of the street, and it is quite beautiful. This house is a Tudor revival, has some Norman aspects to it as well, built in 1928, and we wanted to maintain the integrity of the house, the properties also beyond, beyond that, both properties on each side have additions in the back. So to kind of get to the crux of this, if you took the property and you took the house and everything that we're putting on it and put it in the setback, we wouldn't even be here. So if you took this whole piece, put it into where it's supposed to be, that would not require us to even be here. So that's what we would call a classic C1 variance location of the house and the improvements on the property, and that's non-conforming. So that is our number one hardship for this property, that the existing house is set so far back, and it is kind of pushed more wide so that there is a slight setback requirement issue on one side of the property. So currently the lot area that's required is 15,000. We have 15,000, so there's no change. And there's no other variances other than rear yard setback that we're here for, because that's the only thing we're impacting. We did look at a number of different scenarios in the design process, even potentially adding out front. We didn't really show that to them, where we put the kitchen and kind of flip it around and add on a very attractive, similar design on the front of the house. But of course, the front of the house is really the best part of the house. It's beautifully set on the property. So we kind of worked with what made the most sense with the existing historic house. So I'm going to describe what we propose. So the existing, can you hear me okay? Will this make the recording? It'll be okay? Okay, great. I'll talk a little bit louder. The existing building comes across property. This is the tight point, the 10.2 feet. That's the non-conforming, the setback requirement. There is supposed to be further back, and that is the kind of pinch point there. And as we all discussed, the pinch point not only is there, but it's in the back of the drive, where the concept was you would pull your Model T or something of that nature back here and easily get those into the garage. Well, you can't do that with a normal sized car at this point. Even as my mid-size Volvo, I wouldn't even try it right now. So they're having difficulty doing that. So that is one condition that is pre-existing and we're trying to mitigate. And the other, big piece is that we're adding an addition in the back of the house to expand the kitchen. And that will be a 2-story addition. And we're going to put that in the area of the existing patio, and we're going to push the patio area into the logical place, and I'll describe that in the plans, which would be tucked between the new addition and their lovely screen porch piece. So the house, here's the front of the house. Generally, you view it more on axis. There's a lovely, large, long front lawn, a really attractive series of 4 elements, kind of step across. And actually the garage, and then in the back of the house, the garage portion, and this whole side here, and the garage are actually quite nice. This piece on the front is beautifully designed. And as a preservationist, of course, I love that. But we felt this was a part, luckily, that we had to do the work on, and we could actually improve that. So, proposing with the existing first floor plan, you can see there's this is the existing small kitchen, and it is very, very tight here, and it doesn't really allow for really double loaded, and there's a series of stairways that lead up and circulation issues. So what we're proposing is to clean up, utilize the existing kitchen area, create a much better proportioned kitchen for today's lifestyle, tuck a breakfast space in there, a service area and pantry space, and a new mudroom, because they have no real back door to their house, and that is the concept there. So that's on the first floor, and the stair would come up into the driveway. There'd be a walkway up along the property that would be stepping stones, and a stairway that would come into the mudroom. Breakfast room would open up to the new patio. So we're actually reusing the brick for the new patio here, and we're connecting that to the existing screen porch both sides. So it just feels logical, contextual, etc. And we're maintaining a nice, simple and framed opening that will match other details in the house between the kitchen and dining room. The second floor, so we did, just to let you know, we did look at, even an addition over here, an addition out here, we looked at pushing it out front. This made the most sense. It impacts the least amount of neighbors. It's in the middle of the house and architecturally reinforces the roof line. So on the second floor, currently there are 3 bedrooms with a primary and a hall bath. And what we're looking to do is push and add a new charming kind of nursery office bedroom in the back with a nice little window seat. This is all in very cottage style, Tudor style, and kind of pushing back the bathroom so it will align with this new element, and then leaving everything extant. So really not impacting the whole front of the house. We're kind of the either side. We're only really touching the middle, which as preservationists, we tend to like to do. Let me show you that. So this is kind of the before and after on the outside. So what we're doing is we're leaving all of this on both pieces extant, and we're just adding a 1.5-story style piece in the middle that more replicates the scale of the 2 side elements. You'll see here, this is the very attractive screen porch. It's one of the nicest screen porches on Tudor Botanicals, in my opinion, in all of Summit. And then, so this piece I really think is great, and we're just then creating, once again, another gable piece that matches that design with another nice dormer. And then on the other side, looking from the garage side, this piece would then be lined up with the existing house, with the windows matching the patterning, and then we would have a new stucco and arch and brick here. This existing extant walkway would be entry would be moved out and cut through the wall. And we would, and this is where the addition would go. So the only thing, just to reiterate, we're doing is we're only here for a rear yard setback variance. What the rear yard is currently at 40, required to be 45. It's at 47.4. We're going down to 31.0. That's the variance in the crux of things. The projects is in keeping with the house and the existing requirements for the town. The positive criteria is that it's sized, the property drainage development is sized to be nearly 4 times the requirements of the City of Summit's ordinance. The new low retaining wall in the back, the extended driveway will be level and contain water on the site and limit any water drainage towards other properties. We're also putting a dry well in the driveway to retain that. the proposed additions, the area of the existing patio, therefore, we're minimally increasing the lot coverage percentage, which we're still under. The addition is in keeping with the neighborhood, and the new kitchen bedroom will provide a more updated living space and more logical scaled rooms for today's lifestyle, but still maintaining the historic integrity of the home. And we are the satisfaction of the negative criteria. The variance is proposed for this addition can be granted without any substantial detriment to the public good. It's centered in the back of the house. It's behind the house. Doesn't visually impact the streetscape, and therefore it positively reinforces the historic integrity of the neighborhood, the patterning of the neighborhood, and it's consistent with the master plan. And that, any questions?
Okay, our professionals first.
Can you speak to the dry well and the inlet design at all? I know that's not it wasn't your design, but I'm wondering if you can talk about maybe some of the inverts, the functionality of it.
I can't talk deeply on how the systems work. I really can't.
Okay.
But I can say that we've located it within the new area that we're renovating. We have accommodated the sizing to meet the requirements that we need. We do have a retaining wall that, now that it's 2 feet, it's going to be across the back. That will be finished in the same materials as the rest of the property, which would be stucco and brick to look like the original. The idea was that we were just going to have the drain, all downspouts, drainage, et cetera, that comes off the roof, be accommodated in the dry well. And then if any water was moving, it was moving in a very kind of slow pace, and we weren't increasing the pace of the water. That was basically the concept. As far as this goes, this is above my pay grade.
Okay, got it. So I'll make some observations on the dry well. First of all, the dry well, when I look at the calculations, it is, the note on there says it is only the roof leaders from the addition that are going into the dry well. So I would think that we want to make sure that that is a condition of approval. It is overly sized. The seepage pit is sized for greater than the addition, and it is collecting some of the driveway as well. So it's going into this inlet that's in the back of the driveway by where that landscape or retaining wall, it's a small wall, 2 foot high. So it's going back in there, and that's great. My one concern was that I didn't know if the elevations were gonna match. Where it goes into that inlet, that it has to, that inlet from the driveway has to take the water into the dry well, and it just seemed like that. I can't tell because there's not the correct dimensions on it, but that would just have to be clarified, that would be a condition as well, that they would have to show that the inverts are gonna work, so that there's gonna have to be water.
So
The water has to
we'll
drain from there to the dry well.
So you're gonna put that into the requirements, and then I can communicate with Andrew Clark just about what he needs to show, like how the section is and how the drainage works.
That's right.
There. And it does work according to him, but I can't tell him to, I don't
Right.
wanna.
Yeah, and there's just a few dimensions that I'm missing on there to verify all that.
So
but
please ask
it
and
would-
clarify what dimensions you're looking for, and we'll comply with
Okay,
whatever you need.
okay.
And Marie, is that being submitted to you? I assume we're gonna ask for a drainage plan to be submitted to you or to the city engineer, both?
He's gonna have to submit something to me that,
Okay.
just to show that those elevations are gonna work.
Would that be a formal drainage plan, or?
No, I don't think it needs to be.
Submit
There's just,
confirmation.
there's, on the detail sheet for on the engineering plan, there's something called an inlet detail, And it doesn't exactly tell me how deep that inlet is, and that inlet is meant to hold the water. And there's a standing pipe that's in it that when the water gets high enough, it's gonna go into that pipe and then drain into the seepage pit. But that inlet itself is acting as a seepage pit as well, so that's all good. It's actually providing even more storage. So, it's very unlikely that any water is going to be cascading out of this, because it's really oversized for the water that's going into it. So, so anyway, like I said, I just don't have a dimension of how deep that is. So where is that bottom pipe and how does it get over? I don't know that, so it would be a small dimension that they'd need to get for me.
And the capacity, according to them, was roughly 4 times the requirement.
Yes,
Which is ample, so they can give you the
Agreed.
dimensioning on that.
agreed.
Did I answer your question?
One quick question.
Enough.
One quick question for me is, these are just the leaders off the house, right? Off the addition?
Off of the addition.
Would it be appropriate to consider, if indeed we have 4 times the amount of space, to look to get some of the leaders from the regular house, from the existing house, into this, through the driveway or whatever?
They could certainly consider that, and then they'd have to show some updated calculations.
But would we want that to assist, because do we know if the rest of the house is taking care of the needs of the neighbors as well?
Do you know where the current downspouts go to right now? Do they just go underground?
They go underground into the system. that was
Some
there.
system somewhere.
Some system that is, I'm sure, antiquated. So we can have the engineer run the rear downspouts and connect those off the full back of the house. Or, I mean, it all depends on how extensive I just didn't want to get too involved with excavating entirely around the entire house if possible. So we are interrupting, this whole part of the property. I mean, basically, this whole area behind the house, just to clarify, this area here is all being impacted. This is extant, this is extant. There is a downspout here, and there's one here that's in the drive. That could certainly be connected in, and we can easily connect this. And we do have one along this edge of this volume that's staying, so we could connect that one as well. So those 3 possibly could be connected across the back of the home. Without, let's say, what we don't want to do is excavate entirely around the entire house and redo all the drainage when it isn't really an issue per se.
So I think what I'm hearing him say is that it would be logical if he could take the whole entire back half of the house, pretty much, any of the back leaders that are coming off of the house. So that's the back of the garage roof, the back of the, I'll say the sunroom portion of the house, and maybe half of that main center peak.
Right.
He could take that and add that in,
This-
in addition to the addition.
Yeah, this downspout, and then there's another one here that we can all interconnect, because remember, we're rebuilding the driveway as well, so we can connect that, we can connect these. And that's basically what I did on my house and home. We connected all of them to the new drainage system, and it worked out really well for these 100-year storms that now happen 3 times a year.
The other thing that you could consider is that this is, even though they're not taking the water from the whole entire roof of the house, they are not taking the driveway, which wasn't being collected before, and that's being collected into this seepage pit. So, you could look at it as a little bit of a trade-off. The driveway was increased, they're not collecting the driveway, and then there doesn't have to be a redesign of the seepage pit,
So
although
should
it
we
is larger.
condition getting a plan for this new drainage system for the back half of the house?
I think just to demonstrate that it is sized for the back of the house, the driveway and the addition.
And that they are committing
Just have
to putting it together that way?
Right, because I think that was my question, was, this is, you have a retaining wall at the bottom of the driveway, right?
At the back.
At the back, right, so that is now going to be collecting stormwater that was previously running off the property, like in the, if I'm facing your backyard, the back right corner has a little bit of a dip, and it looks like water kind of runs that way off into a neighboring backyard, right?
All
So,
of
no one likes that happening, but that's what's happening now, so you're improving that situation, right, by putting up the retaining wall. But now this has to be able to capture not just the runoff from the extended driveway, but from kind of the whole driveway, because what used to flow off the driveway is now being contained. So I don't know, like you said, it was 4 times as much, so you've counted the entire driveway in that calculation?
Yeah.
Or just the new just the new bit, just the entire driveway, okay.
And that, but I mean, we can look at the numbers, he can give you exactly those calculations.
I think you just don't want it overflowing, and where does it where does it overflow to?
Correct.
Where's the discharge point?
Right, but right
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
they've improved it.
Yep,
By collecting the entire driveway, including the additional driveway.
right.
So it's,
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're already
Planned.
improving
Yeah.
the situation, right?
so it's
you can look at
planned
it whichever way
to
you want.
accommodate.
The
all of
entire
that.
driveway,
The
yeah,
entire
that's,
driveway.
I think, very much appreciated, because that, obviously you guys you have a slope in your house too, coming from the road, and that, Pine Grove, and then what's that, Manor Hill, or
Manor
whatever,
Hill,
Manor Hill,
yeah.
right? So you have your kind of, you're not at the bottom of the hill, but it comes that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming down Manor Hill, running across Pine Grove, and it's
Yeah.
also, you just don't want to make sure that you're not running into the other property
Right.
behind there.
Yeah. So it should actually be better for the neighboring property with your work than it is now.
That would be a positive.
So the condition would be what?
Exactly.
So what I'm hearing now is a reversion back to submission of a drainage plan to the board engineer for review and approval? And then that would,
Lucky Marie.
Yeah.
And let me just make sure I understand. Do you want the back half of the house to go into it as well? Any of the?
Yes.
If
So
it
you want
can.
all the leaders off the back of the house, plus the driveway, plus the addition, and that's gonna go into the drywall,
If it all fits.
if it all fits.
And I'm sure, like the front of the house, where the garage is, that leader probably drains into the driveway to run backwards.
Don't know.
Well, I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts it does. But, so that has to be included in it too. A question I have about the driveway in the
What,
back.
I'm sorry, what you just said,
Well, the front of the house.
front,
I guess it would be the
downspout.
front of the garage,
Mhm.
where that dormer is, on the right. Where does that leader go? It's
It
probably
goes
drains-
into the ground.
Oh, it
So We
does?
don't,
Oh,
yes,
so you don't know, okay.
but we don't know where it goes
So
for
I'll
that.
give you the
But you're gonna
dollars.
reconstruct that driveway anyway, so you're gonna find out where it goes.
Not necessarily because it's in the front of the existing
Yeah, I wanna do it in
garage.
the back, yeah.
We're not
The
rebuilding.
back of the front, of the- or the front, I'm
Front-
confused with what's front, what's back.
Right there,
Screen
yep.
facing?
Right, correct.
And we're not rebuilding this, we're rebuilding in the back, this whole area, we're not rebuilding up
Okay.
here. What's happening is the front of the house, typical of this kind of vintage house, the downspouts
Goes
from
underground.
into a
Okay.
drainage system under the house. But, of course, it's
The
antiquated.
front of the house is equal to the back of the garage. Okay, I got it.
No.
The front of the garage is where the doors
Front
are.
of this garage,
Yeah,
this is
said
the
it right.
front, and this is the side, Joe, and then this is the back. Front of the garage, side and back. So the back downspout is what we were talking about, and then there's an existing downspout.
I don't
Yeah,
think
my
this
thought
is-
was.
Somewhere, no, it's actually right here.
Yeah, I thought,
Right here.
yeah, my comment was, I thought that drained into the
That does
driveway,
not.
but it does not.
That does not drain
Yeah.
all the way around the property, it
Correct.
drains
Straight down.
into
It goes-
where these-
Goes to wherever.
Where, we don't know where, yeah, in New Providence.
Yeah, it's percolating down there. So one more question about the driveway. You're not making the driveway wider,
No,
you're just making it longer.
correct.
So how is that gonna solve their problem of turning into the garage?
Okay.
What it allows for is a deeper distance, so as you K-turn the car back. So let's pull it back far enough, you're able to turn the car
Okay.
around to get in, which you can't do right now. So what happens is they go down and they kind of back it around a little bit or try to get it in, but there's not enough space to get it.
Okay.
So it creates an ability for both cars to be able to K-turn into the back
Okay.
of the garage. And we did diagram that, but we didn't show that to you, but that's the concept. You could see the differential allows for that distance. That's actually quite a nice distance now for able to get there and pull in. But these are not really parking spaces. They're just a place to finally get the car to be able to get into the garage.
And this plan needs to be provided by when?
The drainage plan?
We
Yep.
usually don't put a time frame on it, so,
Permit. It's
Well,
yeah, in theory.
It's generally during permit.
Under normal circumstances, when would you need to get that?
Well, you're going to, if you were to do an approving resolution, and I guess it would have to be after resolution compliance, when they're coming in to get building permits.
Okay. As long as everybody knows that's what we're doing. Okay, any other questions, Marie?
No, I'm sorry.
That was your first
That was-
question.
That was it. That was my one and only.
And no questions, thank you.
And
Okay.
yeah,
Board
do
members.
any of the board members have any questions for
Yep.
me
Board
beyond
members.
that, like architecturally or?
The one thing I'm struggling with is the rear yard setback, which is the only variance you need, obviously. You know, it's going from, required is 45, you already have, and your proposed is 31, where you have 47 now.
Correct.
I mean, that's a, I mean, when I walked back there, I was a little concerned about how far back that was going.
Well, it isn't, it's no further back, it's basically the same depth
As the patio.
as the patio.
But it's
And
volume, it's 2
correct,
stories.
volumetrically, it's
Yeah.
well, it's really 1.5 stories there. And it actually aligns with the houses on both sides, which both have addition,
One side was a garage,
Correct.
purely a garage.
I
one
understand,
story.
but I'm just saying that those were there. So,
But not 2 story, 1.5 is just a garage. You know, so it's less obtrusive to the neighbors in the back, in my opinion, anyway, you know? In other words, a 10-foot high garage peak can be hidden by trees, where 1.5 story may or may not be. Or, you know, it might take 20 years for the trees to grow, whatever, I don't know, I'm not a tree expert, so. I'm just thinking of the site from what the neighbors will see. And, you know, if there's any here that have the ability to speak tonight, then we'll listen to them. If not, then we'll move on. This is my comment.
Any questions?
Well, this is more ministerial, but because they do have an existing non-conforming side yard setback, would we include that in any relief? Just blessing the grandfathering?
We could, don't need to. It's,
Okay.
it's pre-existing non-conforming
Okay.
clearly. 'cause it-
Sometimes we do.
Sometimes we do when there's an issue, but it's not being
Okay.
impacted here, so usually
Okay.
we wouldn't
Okay.
require that.
You're using the patio as the reason that you can go ahead with the 31. And I guess I need a technical answer to this from our folks is, but you're actually got a 2-story addition, which is a building, not a patio. Is that allowed to be there when you can use the patio as the setback? Are permitted to do that, but it's the building. And I don't have the answer.
I believe, my recollection of the code off the top of my head is that if the patio connects to the house, it is considered as part of the principal setback, so if.
Okay.
I think that's the question, but, I mean,
Well,
regardless.
because
what
the
they're-
2-story addition goes out further than the patio towards the back property line.
Yeah, the requirement either way, under the current code, is the 45 feet. So they're not, I guess, necessarily claiming any sort of relief due to the existing patio. They're still seeking a variance, but it's because it's been located there, and, predates the existing setback requirements. That's why it's located currently. But regardless, they need a variance for the setback.
Yeah, exactly, but the setback is only supposed to be 31 feet, and the building goes further than 31 feet. You can see it right on the drawing.
This is 31 feet, the face of the addition, right? It's supposed to be 45. See this dotted line?
Right, I got it.
That from this
So
dotted
that
line to
therefore, the
there is
building
45.
is 31 feet, and the patio is something like 30.
The new
The
patio?
patio's like 33 or 32. See, it's probably
Okay, it's
1
higher, it
foot.
should be a higher number,
It's
right?
1 foot, yeah.
Right.
That way.
So is that supposed to be like that, or are they supposed to be the same? To me,
Jim, are
that's
you
just-
asking that, should the proposed patio be in alignment with the 31 feet?
Are they supposed to be on alignment?
They don't.
But you're asking for the variance for 31 feet for the building, not for the patio.
I'm following that
Well,
question.
if,
Mr.
if,
Conway,
if-
are you following that question?
Yeah, if we go into the community the packet, and it says right here, the rear yard setback of 31 feet, whereas required, blah, 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 then it talks about the patio. In addition, it shall be noted that the proposed patio encroaches on the rear yard setback. I'm losing my track.
Yeah,
here. Attached photos,
yeah.
and then it says it has to be at least 30 feet. Excuse me, where did I go?
Attached patios, here, mine's fine.
Yeah.
Who's this from?
This is from,
Our zoning officer?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lindsay.
Attached patios, what?
Attached patios may encroach into the required rear yard by no more than 10 feet.
Right.
So,
It
the
does say
required,
the proposed patio has a rear yard setback of 31 feet and does not conform to the requirements, so that seems to indicate it's matching the 31 feet.
Mr. Conway, can you
Well-
clarify to see the proposed patio, is that in alignment with the rear
Thank
facing
you.
wall of the new addition, proposed new addition?
Looks close.
To me, it looks like it's
The
a slight
patio is
deviation.
actually, patio is set back 2 feet from the back of the new proposed.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, it's splitting the variance. One is 31 feet for the new addition, and then the patio would be 33 feet.
Sounds-
Claire.
The patio is
Yeah.
30, the proposed patio is a 31-foot setback, according to
According to the memo, but the plans that we're
Yeah.
seeing shows it at 33.
33.
So they may have adjusted.
What we have in the engineering drawing is that it's 31 to here, and we made the patio slightly smaller than that, which we were saying is 33 feet from that, from what the engineering, just generic box was. Because we actually pulled these pieces out and around the one, it made me feel like it floated more.
Okay, so just to confirm then, originally it was drafted as 31 feet to both the house and the patio. Now you're saying you're cutting back on the patio, so it's 33 feet for the patio, 31 feet for the house.
Correct.
Okay? Everyone's on the same page now?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So is that 2 variances?
Yeah, is that one or
It-
two
it's-
variances?
We would, splitting hairs, it's a rear yard setback variance of 31 feet to the house, 33 feet to the
Okay,
patio.
Okay.
Great.
Is that clear now?
Does that make?
I hope so.
Okay.
Clear as mud.
You made sense out of my fruit salad, I'm sorry.
Gotcha, sure.
but
Just
Yes,
to
sir.
add to that, the patio is supposed to be 35.
Right, we know that.
So, okay, just wanted to clarify that for the record, whereas 33 is what they're asking for.
Okay.
yeah, because right here it says the proposed patio, rear yard setback of 31 feet and does not conform to the requirement. But we're talking about
That's 33.
33.
Yeah, so it's 2 feet instead of 4.
All right, so Andy's drafting up language that includes the
Okay.
patio as well, so I think we're covered.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, are there any questions from the public on this particular witness? I don't see anybody raising their hand. So now I guess we can go to the second part of the audience participation. Does anyone have anything that they would like to tell us about this, any opinions on this particular project? Again, I see none. Do you, as the applicants, have anything that you would like to say to the board in conclusion?
Thank you for your time.
Okay. At this point, we will go to telling us the conditions as we know them and the number of votes that are required to carry this particular project forward if we so desire to do so.
Well, I'll tell the conditions and the votes, and then you'll go into
Yes, we'll
closed
go
session
into
at that point.
right.
So I have two conditions. One is compliance with those conditions noted in the board engineer's memorandum. And second, that the applicant shall submit a drainage plan to the board engineer for review and approval. That covers everything that you were asking about, right, Marie? Okay.
Do you want to put in there anything about what it's collecting?
I think we have the testimony directing you on what it's going to collect, unless we need to see that specifically. I think you have your direction from there. Okay? Only a C variance for the rear yard setback is required, so 4 votes or a majority of the board is required to approve the application.
Okay, and now we go into discussion of the board in executive session. Who would like to kick it off?
I'd like to start. I appreciate Mr. Conway's very thorough explanation of the property, the location of the house, how the house is set back, which if the house was closer to the street, we wouldn't even be here. Appreciate the thought put into not building onto the front of the house and changing the whole character of the house. Just basically put it onto the back and still keep within the character of the house. I think everything has been very well thought out, and I support this application.
Okay. Anyone on this side?
Yeah, I agree with what Ms. Chifo had to say. Oh, and by the way, congratulations on the addition to your family, so I feel like we should have covered that earlier, but, and with regards to putting something in the front of the house, one of the things that I observed when I was, driving by Pine Grove is that your house is, while it's set back 75 feet, so are all of your neighbors. So if you had added to the front of the house, you would have actually changed the whole look of the street, and I think the character of that of your part of the block. So I do think that this is the best solution. And obviously, you're not over on building coverage or lot coverage. It is more like if we could just, move the house up 10 feet, it wouldn't be an issue. So and I really appreciate the oversizing the stormwater and giving the opportunity to maybe direct some more stormwater there, given, like you said, we're having a 100-year storm every 3 months. I think that'll be beneficial to you, and I think it'll be beneficial to the neighbors as well. So it's nice to see it with that much capacity.
And if I could build on that a little, I mean, what we're sort of dancing around with the C variance is usually it's a hardship due to something in the shape of the lot or the topography. And here it's not necessarily that so much as the front lines of all the houses in a row on that side of Pine Grove that almost create the condition that force you to build on the back of the house.
It creates
Sorry.
You-
at
yeah,
this
you don't
point,
get to
we're
say
not-
that.
We're not taking any
sorry.
comments.
That's
I
okay.
apologize.
I'm trying to build this into the C2 for you, Andy. And I'll also note that the back of the house is very well screened. You've got a fence, you've got plantings. It's very hard for the rear neighbor to see anything, and those plantings are pretty tall. So I too can support this.
Other comments from anyone? Okay, I will sum up. I think you have a positive case. I don't see any real negatives. And yes, the fact that the property line is where it is why we're here. Otherwise, you probably, if this was however many feet more forward, we would not even be discussing this here. But it wouldn't be nice for the neighborhood. So this is nice for the neighborhood, and I'm really impressed with the fact that they're willing to go with all of the extra water retention, which is preempting any problems with their neighbor, for their neighbors and for themselves. So I can really support this as well and would entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Second.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Vice Chairman Loikett,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Ms. Zahn,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Ms. Chifo,
Yes.
Mr. Feskins,
Yes.
Chairman Steiner.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Congratulations. Well, we're going to move ahead and try and get some of this in, if we can.
As much as we can.
Results?
Before
Wanna
we do,
present
I'll
your-
just note for the record that Mr. Loikitz has recused from this matter and has left the room.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And
Ready?
you want
Good
to?
evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Hillary Alls from Dempsey and Sheehan, representing the applicant Beacon Hill Club, 250 Hobart Avenue, Block 2203, Lot 1, in the R43 zone. Beacon Hill Club has been part of the Summit neighborhood where it's been located since 1956. Over the years, Beacon Hill Club has received approvals by the Board of Adjustment to update the property in order to provide amenities that reflect the needs of contemporary membership. The focus of this application is on the club's lower campus, which includes the carriage house, which has been part of the property since before it was founded in 1956 and was last updated in the 1990s with some minor bathroom renovations. There's Pat's House, which is the hockey warming and viewing hut, and is a pre-existing non-conforming accessory structure as to height, area, stories, and dimension. And the final area of focus is the parking area, which has a narrow drive aisle and an inefficient parking layout. Modernizing, updating, and reconfiguring these three components of the lower campus will bring the club into current custom and vogue of surrounding clubs in the area, provide an aesthetic benefit to the surrounding neighbors, provide architectural consistency throughout the property, improve safety and on-site circulation, both vehicular and pedestrian, and provide accessibility improvements which currently do not exist. It will add off-street parking, including ADA accessible parking and electrical vehicle charging stations. And it will improve stormwater management by the installation of dry wells, which will have the capacity to capture more runoff than is generated by the proposed improvements. The improvements proposed by this application are to construct certain additions to the carriage house and Pat's House, reconfigure, widen, and stripe the lower parking area, stripe the upper parking area to provide designated off-street parking spaces, and add off-street parking spaces including conforming ADA accessible spaces and electrical vehicle charging stations, which again currently do not exist. None of the improvements proposed are designed to increase membership, programming, or the intensity of the use. In order to realize these improvements, Beacon Hill Club is seeking the following approvals and variances. Preliminary and final major site plan approval, conditional use approval, deviation from the conditional use standards regulating lot coverage. The applicant is requesting less than 1% additional lot coverage. I believe it's 0.65%. Disturbance of steep slopes for 2.12% of the steep slopes on the property.
off-street parking to permit 9 additional spaces rather than the 18 that are required, and to increase the pre-existing nonconformities of Pat's house by expanding the second story and increasing the height by 8.5 feet, but that is only for 75% of the building, and increasing the ground floor area by 55 square feet. Beacon Hill Club has presented this application to its surrounding neighbors over the course of 4 neighborhood meetings, resulting in proposed conditions of approval, which will be presented during the testimony provided tonight. The testimony will also demonstrate the continued appropriateness of the site for the proposed improvements, that the topography and existing lawful structures create a practical difficulty and undue hardship upon the applicant. The application advances numerous purposes of zoning, including but not limited to the general welfare, public safety, and aesthetics. And it will further meet the purposes of the steep slope ordinance. The benefits of this proposal, which include a well-designed and substantial landscape plan, far outweigh any perceived detriment. The presentation tonight will begin with Pascal Lalonde, president of Beacon Hill Club, then Bill Scott, the civil engineer, Brian Cooney, the architect, Benjamin Heller, landscape architect, Craig Paragoy, traffic engineer, and wrapping up with the planner, Paul Phillips. I have nothing else unless there's any questions, or we can call the first witness.
Questions from the professionals on the board? No questions? Questions from the public to the attorney? Questions only. Come forward, please. You have to come forward to use a microphone. And it's a question only to the name and address, please.
Sure. My name is Leodin O'Callahan. Last name is spelled O''Callaghan. I live at 24 Brantwood.
Okay.
I have a question about if there are zoning board members who have a relationship with the club. And it sounds like maybe there was one already, but.
He's recused himself. I don't know if he does, but for some reason he feels he needs to, so he did.
Right. Are there any other zoning members who have a relationship with the club that they feel would present a conflict of interest were they to vote? Okay. The other question I had, and perhaps it's more appropriate later, is if any conditions are made on the plan, such as, let's say, to the hours that the Zamboni can operate or something, how would those conditions be enforced?
That will be part of the testimony.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none,
Can we call
wanna
the
call
first
your
witness?
first witness?
Yep, Pascal Lalonde.
If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Pascal Lalonde, Lalonde.
Thank you.
just one thing, we're going to try and wrap by about 10:25, so, because we still have another executive session to deal with.
Okay, sounds good. So can you please tell the board the position of responsibility that you've had at Beacon Hill Club?
Sure. I'm the president of the Board of Trustees at the Beacon Hill Club.
In your capacity as president, Beacon Hill Club, are you authorized to speak on behalf of the club in regard to the application pending before the board?
I am.
Okay. Can you describe the objectives underlying the proposed improvements?
Certainly. Over the last few years, the club completed a substantial renovation of the main clubhouse, which is located in the upper campus facing Hobart Avenue. The club is now focused on updating and renovating the outdated facilities in the lower campus, which include the carriage house and Pat's house, or otherwise known as the warming hut adjacent to the hockey rink. These facilities are old, outdated, not functional, unattractive, in some cases not safe, not ADA compliant, and not energy efficient. The carriage house has existed on the property since before the inception of Beacon Hill Club in 1956. It was renovated to its current state in the early 1990s, or over 30 years ago. Since then, only minor bathroom renovations have been completed, and the building is in need of significant repair and modernization. The club's goal is to repair and modernize this building to provide more functional space for existing members and employees. In addition, the club seeks to provide storage space for maintenance equipment and to improve accessibility. Currently, the maintenance department does not have a break room or a locker room, and most maintenance equipment is stored outdoors. The swim team coaches and skating coaches have no office space, and lifeguards have no break room. The locker rooms are seriously outdated and not functional. For example, the showers in the locker room are the group-style showers with several shower heads in a single open space. The proposed plans include private shower stalls to provide a private and safe locker room environment for young athletes in accordance with guidelines from Safe Sport, a regulatory body for youth sports. Also, there are currently no family locker rooms. The second story of the carriage house, which includes the dining area, can only be accessed by stairs. Access to the pool or the ice rink from the carriage house is limited. There is no practical viewing area for the pool. The patio around the infant pool does not provide sufficient space, and the existing kitchen is not functional or no longer functional and needs all equipment to be replaced. Another goal is to improve energy efficiency to be more environmentally friendly through the upgrade of the mechanical equipment for the carriage house and by replacing chillers for the ice rink. These were installed in the 1980s. They are energy intensive and well past their useful life. We also aim to install backup generators for both the main clubhouse and carriage house. Shifting to Pat's house, the warming hut adjacent to the hockey rink. This is a pre-existing, non-conforming accessory structure built in 1962. It has not changed materially since. The structure is in need of repair, modernization, and important safety enhancements. Pat's house is used during skating hours, which have been the same for the last 50 years, from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., 3.5 months of the year. Pat's house has serious design flaws. The club's objectives are to provide safer access to the second level and to significantly improve the viewing experience. The existing windows from the first floor are more like bay windows with vertical metal obstructions between each window, which makes visibility of on-ice activity very difficult. The glass on the rink frequently ices up or fogs up, which makes ground level visibility into the rink very challenging. This has resulted in a dangerous condition of overcrowding on the small outdoor viewing platform on the second story of Pat's house. The second level of Pat's house can only be accessed by a very old and narrow spiral staircase. Throughout the lower campus, the club seeks to improve site circulation, off-street parking, landscaping, and lighting. The existing lower campus lighting type and style are outdated and not dark sky compliant. The drive aisle width is very narrow. Trash and recycling areas are not enclosed. The upper campus parking spaces are not delineated, and the handicap spaces are not conforming. Finally, the landscaping on the lower campus is inadequate and is in need of significant enhancement.
Thank you. Recognizing that the club's professionals will testify in more detail, can you provide the board with a general overview of what is proposed as part of the application to meet the objectives that you just laid out?
Certainly. So with regard to the carriage house, the club seeks to construct and make additions to the following areas. The front entryway to allow for the installation of an elevator, providing handicap and stroller access to the building and surrounding amenities. The kitchen area to improve usability and functionality. The west side of the building, essentially making a T instead of an L shape to provide much needed space for indoor space for storage equipment office space for summer and winter employees, a break room for lifeguards, and separate family changing rooms with direct access to the patio. The carriage house locker rooms will be upgraded. The dining room and bar area will be reconfigured and modernized to provide direct access to the patio area, and also to provide upper level pool viewing and seating. With regards to Pat's house, the club seeks the following enhancements. Replace the windows facing the rink to allow for unobstructed views. Construct a 895 square foot enclosed second story observation area, as well as a 311 square foot open viewing deck. This second level will be accessed by outdoor stairs that blend with the slope of the property and provide a safer means of access. Additional improvements proposed include upgrading the mechanical equipment for both the carriage house and Pat's house, installing new chillers in a location that will be screened from view, and installing backup generators that will also be screened. The new equipment and chillers will all be energy efficient and more environmentally friendly. Reconfiguring pedestrian walkways, crossings, drop-off and pickup areas, and the connections between the carriage house, parking area, ice rink, and pool amenities. A minor expansion of the patio area around the infant pool. Significant enhancement to the landscaping in the lower campus. Replacing the lighting so it complies with ordinance standards. Enclosing and screening the garbage and recycling areas. Repaving, reconfiguring, and striping the lower campus parking area. Widening the drive aisle and improving the turnaround area. Adding off-street parking spaces, including ADA accessible spaces. Adding an electric vehicle charging station. And finally, striping the upper campus parking area, which is currently undesignated.
Will these proposed improvements create an increase in the number of members or an increase in the intensity of the use of the club?
No, that's not our plan or our expectation. The improvements proposed are to improve functionality and attractiveness of the space for existing members and employees. The improvements provide ADA compliant accessibility to the carriage house and related amenities. They provide a space for storage of equipment indoors rather than outside around the property. None of the improvements are designed to increase membership or add any additional programming.
And has the club had any neighborhood meetings associated with the proposed improvements?
Yes, the club has held 4 neighborhood meetings on May 8th, May 15th, July 16th, and August 22nd.
And what was the outcome of those meetings?
Upon hearing feedback from our neighbors on the proposed lower campus project, the club has committed to certain conditions of approval that are offered to the board for incorporation into an approval should the board vote in favor of the application. These proposed conditions were circulated to all neighbors within 200 feet of the club's property on August 9th. I will
Could be marked as A1.
I will highlight the 2 main points of the proposed conditions of approval. Number 1 is landscaping. The club commits to the installation and planting of landscaping in accordance with the landscape plan filed with this application and as modified by the city forester, installing drip lines for accelerated growth of plantings, and replacing unhealthy trees as promptly as practicable. Number 2 is confirmation of skating hours, which are from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. during the skating season, which is from mid-November through early March. And also clarification of ice and related maintenance hours and procedures, which include start and end times for ice maintenance, timing for lighting, and operation of snow removal equipment.
Okay, and I think that there was also indoor location of equipment storage and the signage for the emergency access gate on
Correct.
Brentwood. Okay. Have you retained any experts to assist the club in the development of the plans and presentation of this application?
Yes, we have a civil engineer, Bill Scott, architect Jeff Rodding and Brian Cooney, landscape architect Benjamin Heller, traffic engineer Craig Paragoy, and planner Paul Phillips.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Questions from our professionals? None from them? Questions from the board? I'm going to ask one. Women's sports have grown, for those of us, that are watching the Olympics and other things. We're seeing lots of, and of course, there's also Title IX, et cetera. Are there any, I don't know whether or not Summit schools use Beacon Hill as a rental for practice facilities, et cetera?
We don't rent the rink. There's a tradition where the boys and girls hockey team each play a game annually at our facility.
Okay, will this meet the Title IX requirements?
I can't speak to that for sure. I can tell you that the growth in participation among the girls has been outstanding and has been the area of the fastest growth. To give you an example, and I coached many hockey teams at Beacon Hill over the years. My 10-year-old daughter last year was part of the very first U10, so age 10 and under hockey team, all girls hockey team at Beacon Hill. And starting this winter, we're keeping that team, and we will have the first ever U8 all girls hockey team at Beacon Hill.
Well, this kind of goes in just the opposite of part of your testimony, where you were talking about no new programs, and you didn't believe it would be growth.
These are all with our existing membership, and it's not growth per se. It's just a redistribution of numbers from boys. We're seeing more girls participate as they come up as youngsters, as mini mites.
And these facilities will be able to handle that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the upgrades to the locker rooms and things like that, again, they're trying to comply with all of those regulations is what I think you were getting at.
I figure the other experts, when they come
Yeah,
up, will now know
exactly.
that it's coming,
Yes.
so they'll be ready for it.
Perfect.
Are there any other questions on the board?
I've got a quick one. I may have just misheard, but did you say there was one, or I believe I saw elsewhere in the application, 2 electric vehicle parking spaces? How many are being proposed?
One is being proposed.
Okay.
And the traffic engineer will talk about that.
Okay. Any questions from the public? Come on up. And again, we need you to repeat your name and address. Every time you come up, you're going to be asked to do that.
Leah Callahan, O''Callaghan, 24 Brantwood. So now I have my question about the conditions that were mentioned. How would those be enforced?
So they'll be incorporated into a resolution of approval, any conditions that are imposed by the board, and I imagine acceptance of these proposed conditions will be one of them. It's memorialized, adopted by the board, and then an official record. The zoning officer can issue any violations for non-compliance with any conditions in the resolution, including those specifically imposed by the board.
So in other words, imagine 3 years from now, they start practicing hockey at 5 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. I would call the zoning board. That's how I would ask for that to be enforced?
No, not the zoning board. You would call the land use department, and they'll get it to the zoning officer.
You-
They can
you talk to
enforce
Stephanie.
violations. Yeah.
Okay.
Or potentially
Seriously.
code enforcement. There's a number of people within the city who can issue violations.
And
Okay, got
actually,
it.
we haven't read, I think some of these are included in what we received here, the hours and things like that. Obviously, if you notice, when it was handed to me, I put it over here because I wanted to listen to the testimony. I have a feeling that over the next, until we know when our next meeting is with these folks, we'll have a chance to read that. There will be other people testifying, and we can always bring the gentleman back and ask him how, I'll tell you, we don't allow certain things in town at 8 o'clock in the morning. How are we going to allow 7 o'clock? And you got to get the ice ready ahead of time at 6 o'clock. We may want to ask those questions and find out the answers to them and know where we go from that point forward. But, it's all going to get covered because we have, I think, another 6 witnesses to go.
Only 5.
Only 5. There's a total of 6.
Yep,
Thank you.
And that's not going to happen tonight.
no.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I think we've hit that point that we should not bring
The engineer on.
your next witness on if you think. What is the open date that we're looking at?
October 7th.
That's kind of quick for us. Yes, thank you. Is October 7th acceptable to you guys?
Yes, with no notice, right?
Okay.
I imagine you're okay with no further notice?
And no further, well, so we'll be looking for a motion to carry this till that date of October 7th with no further notice,
And just to
and you
confirm-
waive the time for the board to act. I'm
Yes.
going to get it all one of these
Yes.
days.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience and understanding. We have one item that I think we can handle in open session, but it was initially talked about that it would be in closed session, and that's the RFQ discussion. The only thing I was going to say is the annual time of the year has come. If you have a company that you feel should be considered for the positions that we have open, which are legal, engineering, and planning, and we hire those every year. Make sure that Stephanie knows who they are and has the proper contacts, or contact them yourself and ask them to contact the City of Summit to get the specifications so that they can put in the proper documentation. And then that will all go through the professional purchasing office, and we will have a gander at that, I think, what, November?
Yeah.
We will get our, the information in November, and then we'll determine whether or not we're interviewing and how we move forward.
Usually the beginning of November, you said.
Right. And that was what I was going to say in closed session, which I think is fine in open session unless the attorney is going to tell me I did bad.
Yeah, it's all good.
No, and a
Okay.
couple of years ago, we did go through a really rigorous RFP process. I know we
yes.
have several new members since then.
And I think, and we may very well be going through that
Right,
again. I
right.
don't know.
Right.
It depends upon what we see in applications and responses to the RFQ.
Okay, good.
Any questions, any comments? If not, our next meeting is September the 16th. And anybody want to move to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you all.